Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. All right. So this is it. This is going to be the AJATT finale. I'm not planned at all, or I haven't done any planning for this. But I got one comment the other day, and someone was asking for the finale, and it has been long in the waiting, I guess, if that makes sense. Is that I don't know, but yeah. So I'm on Shogatsu Yasumi right now, and my company has until the 9th off, and so I've got a few more days, and I had a little bit of time right now, so I figured I'd make it now. Otherwise, I know I probably would just put it off, and so that is what we're doing. So I decided to make this into a live stream because, you know, just in case someone decides to drop by and ask any questions so I could answer it. But, you know, as most of these videos on YouTube, you know, talking about their AJATT experience or whatever, it's normally rambling. So that's what this is going to be, just like my, one of my most popular videos, the 3-year AJATT update one or whatever, the live stream one that I did. It's going to be similar to that. I'm just going to ramble. But there's going to be some key core advice in here, you know, scattered through and about. So if you are interested, and if you are doing AJATT, and if, you know, you're in this small niche in this world of people that, you know, are learning Japanese through this, like I said, niche method of AJATT, then this will probably be beneficial for you to watch, or at least listen to. You don't have to watch because it's just going to be my face on the screen. But at least to listen to, like a podcast or whatever. But, yeah, so if any of you guys don't know who I am, if there's any new people watching, my name's Luke. I used to go by Skirim, and now I'm going by InakaLUKE, which is my new name on YouTube. But yeah, my name is Luke, and I've been doing AJATT. Well, so this is what I'll get into, but I haven't done AJATT. I haven't been doing AJATT for multiple years now at this point. Let's see. So I started doing AJATT basically whenever I was 15, I think. And I was what would it be, a junior in high school or something like that, or it was either freshman or junior in high school is when I first started doing AJATT, and it was shortly before then when I first found out about AJATT, and I continued doing AJATT up until, let's see, last time I can say I was still doing AJATT was probably still when I was in the UK, and that was the very last bit. And even then, I wasn't really doing it hardcore. You know what? I guess I should explain what AJATT is, because some people, maybe they don't even know anything about AJATT at all. I'm sure they do, but... So AJATT, it basically is just an acronym. It stands for All Japanese All the Time. And it is a niche method of learning Japanese. And it was created by this guy named Katsumoto. He has a blog where he's got all these different articles, basically... talking about the principle of this method, which is literally just to listen, read, and immerse yourself into Japanese 24/7, basically, like literally every second of the day, to just constantly immerse yourself into Japanese. It's pretty much the most hardcore method out there of learning Japanese, and that's why it's, you know, niche and not very many people know about it. But it is nowadays. It's it's pretty popular. It's pretty common. You see it. It goes by a different name. It's like some people just call it like immersion method or whatever. But the OGers, the OG AJATTers or whatever, they will all know it as AJATT, because that's pretty much where it originated. But yeah, so like Map versus Japan, and I'm not even gonna lie, I'm not even up to date with any of the new AJATT or in my area or whatever it's called now. Refold, or I think Refold was the last thing it was called that Matt was doing, but anyways, you can hear the chimes outside. I'm definitely in Japan. This is not a fake Japanese house with the fake Fusuma. No, but Yeah, so like I said, I'm not up to date with anything in the AJATT realm nowadays, so I have no idea what's going on. But what was I saying? Yeah, so I stopped probably around, let's see, when was I in the UK? My last stream that I had done, I was like, what? I think I said 3 years. Let's see. Yeah, so the last time I was probably officially doing AJATT, or at least I would consider myself still doing AJATT, was probably around 2 to 3 years ago. So altogether, so 2 to 3 years ago. So what would that be? It's 2024 now. It just started. By the way, Happy New Year's, guys. Yeah, so what? Around 2022 or something like that. 2021 was pretty much the end of my AJATT career. At least that's my self. What do you say? Proclamation or whatever. But yeah, so. But I would consider myself. I'd say that I did about 5 years of like hardcore AJATT or whatever. Whatever you would say that. And when I mean hardcore AJATT, what I mean by that is that I did roughly maybe around 8 hours on average, if not more, of immersing myself in Japanese, and I was constantly. The main thing with AJATT is you're constantly. How'd you say it? Your cognitive. How'd you say it? Your cognitive. Okay, I'm forgetting English. You're always focusing and you're always trying to be immersed in Japanese. That's the main part of AJATT, right? And so with that in mind, yeah, probably about 5 years of solid AJATT, and then and about 8 hours on average a day. And before I found AJATT, a little background in my story. So before I found AJATT, I was already studying Japanese through kind of more traditional methods. I use like textbooks, and I use this website called Memorize, which is it's kind of like Anki, which is if you do AJATT, you know Anki. It's basically like a flashcard application where you review these flashcards that you create, and it helps you memorize words and vocabulary and grammar structures and whatever. And so I used something similar to that. It's called Memorize, and then I used a bunch of other different like apps on my phone and textbooks, and I used to watch loads of different Japanese, like basically just people teaching Japanese on YouTube. Like I think his name is George, Japanese from Zero. I used to watch him a lot. But anyways, yeah, I did like kind of the traditional methods, I guess. I pretty much tried everything in the book, and I did that for about a year or two. So I had a good structure, a good base kind of before I had started AJATT. But I was pretty hardcore, especially in the beginning. And yeah, in the beginning I was doing more like 10 to 12 hours a day. So another bit of backstory, I guess. I think I already... If you want more kind of like in detail, you could watch my my popular live stream that I did, the 3-year or whatever update, AJATT introduction or whatever one. What's up, Wamu, in the chat? Yeah, this is the finale. Yeah, I think it was you. You were the one who asked for it. So yeah, this is for you, man. I haven't prepared anything, so I'm sorry this is not maybe what you expected, but I kind of want to just kind of get this AJATT thing off my chest, because I'll be honest with you and everyone who might be watching, is, to be honest, AJATT's not really a part of my life anymore. Yeah, no problem. And it hasn't been for a while, And I want to kind of get onto this later on. But I have like kind of more core advice that I want to give people that kind of expands AJATT. So I'll wait to get to that advice in a bit. But yeah, so back to my story, I guess. Yeah, so again, if you want more of the details, you can watch my previous videos. You'll get a bit of backstory. But basically, when I was in high school, actually before high school, in middle school, I went to a normal brick and mortar school, and then high school, I convinced my dad to let me enroll into online school, and that was pretty much right about the time that I found AJATT. And the whole reason why I convinced him to let me do online school is because, well, one, I hated brick and mortar school because I didn't have much friends. It wasn't that I had much friends, but I just didn't kind of I don't know. I couldn't see eye to eye with all of my other like similar age students or classmates, whatever. I don't know. They were just all into like different things. I mean, they were into like the typical stuff you were into when you're in like middle school, and I was like kind of not interested in that. Like I actually had goals and stuff and things I wanted to do, and so yeah, I didn't really like it in the first place. And then also when I found AJATT and I knew about this, and then I was starting to get awaken into this kind of hardcore method, which I mean, especially at the time, when you first find AJATT and you find like Katsumoto, and then at the time, and I think I'd found AJATT before. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I found AJATT before I'd first found Matt versus Japan. But anyways, yeah, when I first saw like Katsumoto speaking in Japanese and stuff like that, and then in the comments and stuff, and everyone was saying he was so good. And then later on, I would find Matt versus Japan, and he was like really good too. But when I see this, and then and I'm sure most people can relate to this, but it gets you super motivated, right? So that time I was super motivated, and also just the AJATT site in general is so well written. Each of the articles, each and every single one of them, they make you just so motivated, and all the things, it just makes sense because it's not written like a philosophical book or whatever. It's written like something that anyone could just read and kind of relate with and understand, because he doesn't use difficult concepts or whatever. He makes a lot of analogies that are really easy to understand. And yeah, so that was right about whenever when I was becoming a freshman or whatever in high school. And yeah, I managed to convince my dad, and I did really good in school. Well, that was like part of the agreement, I guess, is that I didn't slack off. But the good thing about online school, and the reason why I chose online school in the first place, because if you go to a brick and mortar school, you spend 8 to 10 hours. Well, you spend 8 hours at school a day. That's like guaranteed. There's nothing you can do about that, right? And then you got to go home and do homework and stuff like that. And you're pretty much just too tired in general to do anything else, So even if you had hobbies, or if you had like other goals or something that you wanted to accomplish, you couldn't do it. And that was a big problem with me, because yeah, I just hated that it was just kind of a waste of time. It wasn't like I was really getting anything out of school. It's just like you just got to go, right? So by doing online school, I freed up a lot of time, and yeah, I managed to pretty much get all my schoolwork done, all my classes done, all my homework done in a day within 4 hours. That was just me. I would just bang it all out of the way, and full concentration, get it all out of the way, get it completely done, and then I'd have the rest of the day just to do what I wanted, which was AJATT. And so yeah, I would immerse myself. I'd watch anime. I used to binge watch all sorts of different anime series and stuff like that. I'll get into it later too, but I'm not really into anime anymore. But yeah, and then yeah, I would make loads of Anki cards. I did the whole AJATT thing. Again, you can watch my older videos and you get, you'll hear the same thing. But I did RTK, remembering the kanji. I redid that 3 times, because you'll forget it, and anyone else who's done it will probably be able to relate with that, but you'll forget the kanji. So I'd redone that. I'd made loads of sentence cards. I'll mention this now, but one of the things in AJATT is to get to 10,000 sentence cards or something like that, or 10,000 Anki cards, whatever. I will say this: I'd never, even to this day, I'd never gotten to 10,000 AJATT finale anime. Yeah. I'd never gotten to 10,000 sentence cards. That's just an admission on my part. Honestly, I don't even know how much sentence I've probably gotten to and this is, when I say that, I'm counting ones that I actually made, and not in later days there was honestly can't remember, because like I said, I've been out of this, but I think it's called anime cards or whatever. There's all sorts of different ways to fasten up the process of making sentence cards, but in my opinion, it wasn't really the same as actually making them yourself, so I didn't really use it. I tried it in the beginning, didn't really use it, so I only count the cards that I actually made, and there's probably less than 6,000, or something like that. I never got to 10,000, but I did read quite a bit. I don't know, I have a, what's it called, book meter or whatever. I haven't listed all the books that I've read, but even just on Book Meter, there's probably at least like 20 or 30 books, and most of those are novels and stuff like that. And I've read more, and now with like work and stuff like that, which I'll get on whatever, but now I just read like stuff I'm into work. This is like CAD, computer aided design. This is kind of like related to my work that I do here in Japan. So I'm studying for an exam to get certified in CAD, but that's a whole different thing. But yeah, now I just kind of read it. Like, it's not like, again, I'll get on to this, but when you do it for so long, it becomes like you just do it. It has nothing to do with AJATT, you know. You're not trying to learn Japanese. I mean, it's like a plus, you know. You find a new word, you know, you could make a card, you know. You're probably not going to. By the way, I haven't used Anki in like ages. I don't even know the last time I used Anki. It was probably before I had even stopped doing AJATT, because halfway through AJATT I stopped doing Anki too. But I'll get on to that later. But yeah, where I was going this. Yeah, I was really hardcore. And fuck. Where I was going. I guess the other methods I used, it was really just a bunch of I did a bunch of listening. I would say, oh yeah, also, kind of, you know, getting excited. Like I mentioned this in the beginning, but I'm going to ramble a lot here, so bear with me. But also, in the first like year or two, before I'd even was starting doing AJATT, that was kind of the time where I was using Memorize and like all these other apps and stuff like that, and textbooks and stuff like that. I used Hello Talk. Most people know probably Hello Talk, maybe, I don't know. Now it's kind of a weird place, a weird app or whatever. But at the time, I just generally used it because I wanted to practice speaking Japanese, and I did want to make like Japanese friends. Oh, you know, and I should mention this too, right? So, even from the very beginning, before I'd even ever touched Japanese at all, I'd always had an interest in Japan. I'd always wanted to go to Japan. I'd always wanted to live. I was like, I don't know why. I can't give you an exact like reason, you know. Yeah, was it anime? Yeah, part of it was probably anime. Was it all anime? No. At the time, you know, when I was still, like I said, when I was probably in middle school or whatever, you know, Japanese movies, just like kind of the image that you get from Japan through the media at the time, you know, like the culture, everything just seems so cool, so interesting, so different. The people, whatever. And this is a really big thing too, and I might have mentioned this in the last one, but if I hadn't, I'll mention it here. Escapism was a big part of it, and I'm not even going to lie. And maybe someone can relate here, but yeah, I had lots of problems when I was growing up, whatever. Family problems, problems at home. Won't go into detail because that's not you know what this is about. But again, like I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate. But for real, I feel the same exactly. So yeah, escapism, that was like a big thing, you know. And when you find something, and for me, I feel like I was kind of lucky, right? And I feel like anyone, if you're here and you're watching and you found AJATT, bro, should I just bite the bullet and move to Japan or thug it out after graduating college with a degree and work in Japan? What's up, man? Nice to see you again. Bite the bullet and move to Japan or thug it out after graduating college with that degree and work in Japan. Man, that is kind of a long question too. I don't know. I mean, if you're already in college, I would wait and just graduate. But if you're not in college and you're kind of stuck in your life and you're like, I don't know what to do, I would just come to Japan. If you have any means, I would just come here and then figure it out. There's always a way. People will say it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult, but there's always a way. If you're in college, I would graduate and come here, just because you always have the chance of like becoming an English teacher, and that'll get you a visa. But I'll get more into your question like later on. But let me just kind of finish this bit. So, what was I saying? Escapism. When you're young, I feel like this is a big thing. I'm so young now. I'm only 20, by the way. Are you still on the spouse? Yeah, I'm still on the spouse visa. So what was I saying? Yeah. still young, but when you're young, when you're kind of like middle school, high school, around then, you find something you're really passionate about. It's like you just give it your all, especially, and then I feel like it fuels the fire. If you have like problems at home, you have all these other shit that's going on in your life. And for me, I feel like I'd really fucking, like, everything else in my life was just kind of dog shit. And the only thing kind of like to look forward to was just Japanese and like getting good at something. And I don't know, it was fun. It was generally fun. Like, I can say the first like 2 to 3 years, mainly like the first 2 years. The first 2 years when I was doing AJATT, it was probably one of the most fun times of my life. Because you could see the the growth, the improvement. It's just very engaging, and you never felt bored. It's funny now because like now that I'm past the whatever, like past AJATT, past this Japanese thing, past this kind of passion or whatever that I had found at the time. Now if I just sit at home and I don't do anything, then I'm like bored to death. I don't know what to do. But at the time, I would never be bored. Even just being at home all the time, Also, I'll admit, I was kind of like a hikikomori at the time, But if anything, it was like just sitting there, my eyes glued to the screen, watching anime, reading manga, reading books or whatever, doing Anki cards, and then occasionally watching some like English AJATT review or AJATT, update video or whatever. That was it. That was just like the highlight of everything, And then everything else around me is like chaos happening in the back, all this shit going on, everything. It seems like everything in my real life was just fucking, plummeting down. But none of it mattered to me because I was just so focused on AJATT. And I think that really saved me, Without that, I think I could be in a darker place now. I won't get that because it sounds dramatic, but it's true. I mean, like, it really did help me to have like something that I was super passionate about because I had lots of struggles. But I always had that thing to like kind of look forward to, always had that thing kind of, and I think that is important. Not just for AJATT. Again, I'll get on to this later about like more of the core advice, but anyways, and then yeah, so what I was saying is that even from the very beginning, I'd always wanted to go to Japan. I'd always had like an interest in Japan, and I think most people who get into AJATT, like nowadays it kind of differs because there's people who are kind of like more softcore, if that makes sense, like people that choose kind of like how do you say it? The sugar-coated AJATT or whatever it's called nowadays, immersion, refold. I don't know what it is, but because they don't kind of maybe they don't have the same goals. But I feel like most of the people I know, and from my personal experience, if you were into AJATT in the first place, it meant that you pretty much had some goal to live in Japan. That was like at the very like base of everything. Your goal was to live in Japan at some point. And then, so AJATT that's just like, I need to get as fucking good as I can at Japanese. And so AJATT's like the most hardcore method, and therefore I'm going to do AJATT, right? So, but at the base was like, okay, I want to live in Japan, right? And so nowadays, I don't think there's as many people that, I'm sure there's still like a lot of people that do, because they want to live in Japan, but there's more people that are like, I don't really want to live in Japan. And, I just want to speak Japanese so I can watch anime or whatever, or so I can read manga so I could do this like specific thing. I'm saying I feel the escapism part though. Naive adolescence is spooky. Yeah, it is spooky, but it's good in a lot of ways. But yeah, man. So fuck yeah. So and then in the beginning too, I'll mention this. I think I mentioned this in the last live stream too. But I had serious plans in the beginning of the process to go and study abroad while I was in high school. That was like a big thing for me. I really wanted to do it. And I'd actually, I don't know if I mentioned all that. By the way, did you meet your wife on Hell Talk? Yes, that is a thing I mentioned. But yeah, I did meet her on Hell Talk. That was where it all started. That was before I'd found AJATT. We became friends through there. And nowadays, I think Hell Talk is kind of a weirder place. I think it's kind of become more of like a dating app. But back then, it was kind of way more innocent. People just kind of wanted to make friends and speak basic English or whatever. My wife now, at the time, she literally had no interest in English. She still doesn't really have that much interest in English. she literally like says even now to this day that it was her friend that recommended her to download the app. But basically she just did it because she wanted to study for her English test at the time. And so she was just trying to get some free answers basically. And that was it. But thanks to that, now we met, and, you know, we've been married now for, what do you say? In another 3 months, it would be 2 years, and we've been together now for like almost 6. So crazy how shit works. But anyways, back to thing. Yeah. So yeah, I really wanted to do study abroad while I was in high school. It was a big thing. I'd actually there was a program. There's multiple programs. So I did a bunch of research at the time. I can't remember what they were called. There was like a 3-letter one, A something, and then end with an S or something like that. Can't remember, but I think that was the one that Matt vs. Japan went on. And but that one was like for rich kids with rich parents. So there's no way I was gonna be able to do that. But then there's another one which was only like a summer program. So it was only like a few weeks, I think. And it was called like, I don't even remember. It was something youth something. I can't even remember because it's been so long. If you watch my last live stream, I'm sure I talk about it. But I went through there, and it was like the full price. I think it was like $3,000 with a scholarship. But that covered everything. It covered, I don't know if it covered your plane tickets, but it covered everything while you was there. So it covered your school, your host family, all the money your host family would have to spend, you know, everything to do with your school and shit like that, and food and everything. It covered everything basically while he was there, and it was like a month long or something. And to be honest, I really wanted to do it like for the whole like school year or whatever, like one school year. Peak program, yeah. But like I said, you know, my family is poor. I was poor. There's no way I was gonna be able to do that. Only rich, you know, rich kids were able to kind of do that. But yeah, I found the scholarship. But with $3,000, that was like way more kind of realistic for me. And the scholarship was actually like, it was something that I could apply for. It was something that anyone could apply for. You just had to write like, it was like 5 essays or something like that. But I had a friend at the time, no longer friends. I have no idea what he's up to now. But there's this guy named Tyler. Yeah, me and him, him and I guess, we were really, we both were trying to do that program. And we had done all the essays. We wrote like 5 essays. We did a good job on like all of them. Filled out everything. And I think, I can't remember if I had gotten accepted, but I know I did I actually did, like, got to the interview stage, and I was doing an interview with like this Japanese person who worked for that, for the program or whatever. Met Tyler, cool dude. He's good as fuck too. Okay, wow. So he's still out there. Interesting. Anyways, yeah, I done the interview or whatever, and then that at this point, whenever I was planning on doing the study abroad or whatever, I'd already been dating my girlfriend. We were already together, and it kind of changed. You know, whenever I started dating my girlfriend, I was like, my wife now. It was more of like, well, yeah, I do want to go to Japan, but I also want to go and see her, right? And so at the time, they kind of mentioned that when I was doing the interview, and they were asking me about like, where would you like to be? Because, you know, you get a choice, you get a so-called choice, but in reality, it's pretty much just like, they'll just throw you wherever the fuck. You know, it's like wherever they'll take you, basically. So you could say, oh, I want to go to Tokyo, and then you could go to Hokkaido. It's not actually, if you say Tokyo, you're more likely to go to Tokyo, but in my case, my wife's from Wakayama. That's where I'm in now. And you know, and I said that at the time, like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. And so I thought it would kind of be, so then I ended up actually, I made it all the way to the interview. I think I would have gotten accepted for the scholarship, and then I could have paid like, what, $3,000, which I was saving up. My dad would probably help me out a little bit. And I could have gone on that program, but I decided to give up on last second and just completely, say fuck it, because I didn't really want to go all the way to Japan and then not be able to see my girlfriend at all. And so that was kind of a lost dream. But it was still motivating at the time, and I did really sweat off Japanese. And yeah, and then even after that, I'd always had plans to go to Japan. But now it was kind of more different, because it was like, now I have a girlfriend. I have like kind of a reason, like an actual reason, other than like, oh, I just want to go to Japan. I actually have a reason to go now. And so I'm trying to think. I think I pretty much covered all of this stuff though in my last one. So I'm trying to think of like different stuff I can talk about. Yeah, I will say, the fire of like Asia, it really does go down after the first 2 years though. After the first 2 years, you kind of get, it's just, I don't know, the motivation, whatever. I mean, it's different for people. Improvement in Japan. Okay, yeah, we'll get on to this. Yeah. So I mentioned this earlier, but I have not been doing AJATT at all for the past like 2 to 3 years. And you're like, well, what the fuck does that mean? You live in Japan. You've been living in Japan for like nearly 2 years. Yeah. When I say that, like I said, I mean that I'm not focusedly like constantly trying to immerse myself in Japanese all the time. Like, yeah, when I'm at work, everything's Japanese. At home, everything's Japanese. If anything, I speak English like hardly ever. The only time I speak English now is whenever I go and see Max, my friend from the UK, who lives in Wakayama now. And that's it. Everything else is in Japanese. But I still don't consider it AJATT, which this is this is maybe kind of something I should stress about more, because AJATT is more about the fact that you're consciously engaging yourself in Japanese rather than just being in a scenario with Japanese. I think in the original like articles Katsumoto wrote or whatever, I think he made it sound like you just be somewhere with Japanese, which is important, don't get me wrong. But that's like saying, how do you put it? That's like saying, I'm trying to think of I can't think of a good analogy, but it's not just about being there in that scenario. Yeah, like that is important. In the beginning, that's really important. Yeah, when you first start off, that is important. But when you get more advanced, just being there is not good enough. Just having Japanese spoken around you is not good enough. You have to be conscious. You have to look and try and find all the different things that you don't understand, and then you have to pick up on them really quickly and write them down and make a note, or else you just you let it pass, and that's just how it is. And so by that definition, yeah, I haven't been doing Japanese or AJATT the past 2 years before I'd even come to Japan. Have I made an improvement since coming to Japan? Well, yeah, of course. I haven't. How big of the improvement? See, it's hard to even judge because I don't remember how bad or how good I was like 2 years ago. But I do think I've made quite a big improvement. I didn't know. I don't know if I. Not that I think this really matters at all, but I made a video quite a bit ago about advice about taking the JLPT, and that was like right after I took it. I think I took that in the car after I got done with the test, but I don't think I made any updates after that. But yeah, I did pass JLPT N1, but I didn't get a good score. I got a pretty bad score. So if that says anything, but it's not necessarily because the questions were really difficult. It's more like listening is by far my best ability, I guess. But I think on the listening section, I actually got fucked because it has nothing to do with really Japanese. And if you've taken the JLPT, you might know this. It's mostly trick questions. They'll give you the answer in the first like 2 seconds. And then if you haven't written down all the notes quick enough, or if you just didn't think it would be like so tricky, then you basically fucked. Yeah. And also, I'll mention this right now because if any of you guys come to Japan, this is very fun. Yeah, there's a funny thing. All tests like this are in Japan are like this. It's not just the JLPT. This is how Japanese people, they like to test you. So this is kind of a ramble, but I would pull it out, but I don't want to show my Nagi. Sorry, my cat's fucking around. But a few months ago, I decided to get my motorcycle license in Japan. So I already have a normal like driving license or whatever in Japan, yeah. I converted it from my Washington license back in the U.S. And I should make another video about that because that would be useful for some people, I guess. But I wanted to get my motorcycle license so I could ride a Super Cub. I haven't made any videos about that too, but I bought a 110cc Honda Super Cub, and it's pretty badass. So I could go on like adventures, I can go camping, I could do some touring, and it's just I haven't made any updates about my life, but a lot of things is coming out. If you're looking in the background, I rented out a Akia in Wakayama. I live really close to the ocean. I'll make a whole nother video about it, but I'm really in the fucking Inaka now. So I've got a big garden. I have plants and shit growing out, vegetables and shit. Kubrick Napoleon. It's like an English test in school. You can be a native speaker and still fail. It doesn't really have anything to do with fluency. Yeah, it's that, but it's more so they try more to trick you than they try to get. It's like if you read some of the questions, it's like they don't even really want you to know the knowledge for the sake of it, like for you to know the knowledge. They just want you to be able to like, you know, unpuzzle their tricky questions, you know. And when I say, okay, so I'll get back to it, but when I say that the way they do tests in Japan is like it's the same, like the JLPT is like the same as all other tests in Japan, I really mean it. So when I went and I signed up to get my motorcycle license, the first thing that they do is they do what's called a Teksei Kensa, which is it's the same thing if you get your normal driver license in Japan. It's basically a personality test, right? Completely fucked. It's nothing like anything. If you're from like the West, it's nothing like the ones that they have in the West. I mean, you know the ones in the West where it's like they'll give you a question and it'll be like, you know, like it'll be like how much do you agree with this statement on a scale to like 1 to 5 or something like that. Yeah, it'll be like when you see a puppy crying or whatever, like on a scale to 1 to 5. How much does that make you feel like empathy or some shit like that, right? And then you give an answer, and then it's a bunch of similar questions, and then it'll kind of decide your personality. It's nothing like that in Japan. It's completely fucked, especially for like the driver's test. I could go on a whole rant about this, but it was fucking insane, right? So I go in the school, yeah. Already, like I could just tell, like, and I'll just go back to this real quick. And you know how I was saying I wanted to do study abroad. It's funny now because now that I know how school actually works in Japan, fuck that. Like the high school experience would have been great, you know, like getting all those kind of like cool, you know, memories and shit from like high school in Japan. But the actual school bit about it, the actual like studying tests, you know, like the politics around it is fucked. And so when you walk into these driving schools or whatever in Japan, they're very much like normal schools, like a high school or whatever. They have all the same things. They have the chime, they have the different periods, they have the different teachers that are just like it's literally a school, like that has nothing to do with driving. Like that's how it feels when you walk in. And I walk in, I'm like, yeah, so I have a normal driver's license. I want to get my motorcycle license. I tell the woman that, fill out all the paperwork. It's like, okay, cool, you're all set. So the first thing starts today, and it starts right now. Walk into that room, and you're doing a test. And I'm like, what the fuck? So yeah, you pay the money, and then the first thing that they make you do is the Teksei Kensa or whatever, the personality test. Or it's not really a personality test. It's more like suitability test, I guess is what you'd say. There's probably a better word for that. But anyways, walk in. The instructor guy, fucking dickhead. He's an absolute asshole. He's like the worst attitude ever. They got like this announcement going on. You have 2 booklets, which is normal. Like you know, you have like the answer booklet and then the question booklet, right? But then the questions are also on the screen or whatever. Yeah. Anyways, they're on the screen, and then you got the announcer, and the questions themselves weren't that puzzling. It was basically, but they had puzzles basically. It was like it'd be like a picture, and then it'd be like a broken piece of the picture, and then it'd be like fill in the blank, which is not that complicated. But the way they answered all the questions and stuff like that, this is what I mean. Like if you're not used to the system in Japan, everything will fuck you over. Like You know, like in America or in the West, I'm sure most places like this, you fill in like the bubble or you fill in the circle, you know, you fill it in, you grade it out, right? It's not like that. They have like a box with dotted lines, you know, horizontal and vertical. And then it's like one vertical line is, so there'll be 4 boxes and then 1 vertical line. So instead of filling it in, you have to do like 1 vertical line. And then if you wanted to like change your answer, you'd do a cross to show that that's not the one. And then you do another vertical line and the one that, you know, that you thought was correct. But I didn't understand any of this because it was like, this is my first time ever filling out answers like this. So I was trying to get the person to slow down, and he was just going so fucking quick, and the announcers just kept going and whatever. And then the questions just started getting fucked. Like, and then, you know, like those questions where they're like, they show you a picture, like a white and black picture, and a black and white picture, and then they're like, what does this look like? You know, like, yeah, everyone's seen like those type of questions, right? But these ones were completely fucked. They were like, I swear to God, like, I would change this, but and show it like a paint, open up paint.exe and then show like type thing. They were just fucked. It was just a random like black blob on the screen, and then you'd be like, "What does this look like?" And the answers were absolutely insane. They're like, "Oh yeah, it looks like a naked woman that was dying and had her thumb in her mouth or whatever." Like, it was absolutely insane. And then like halfway through, I literally raised my hand and I asked the teacher, I'm like, "What the fuck does this have to do with driving? What does this have to do with learning how to fucking ride?" And he just got so pissed off at me, and he's like, But I'll talk about this later because this has to do with core advice about Japan and whatever. But you can't step out of your boundaries here. And there's a very specific way to do things, and you don't ask questions, even if it makes no sense. And then the very last set of questions, they made no fucking sense at all. They're like, it was like, write the letter A in these boxes as fast as you can without getting outside the box or whatever. And it was like, again, this is a teksei kensai. Teksei means like suitable, and kensai means just text or test, right? So basically, this is they're basically deciding how suitable you are as a driver based off of how fucking fast you can write the letter A in these boxes. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just insane. But anyways, oh yeah, and then another thing too, like my wife's sister, she finally passed or whatever, but she's been taking her scooter lessons in Japan so she could ride a moped, because you can get a license just to ride a moped even if you don't have one for a car, right? And they just have the written exam. There's no like physical exam to ride the scooter or whatever. And when I say physical, I mean like actual driving test or whatever. It's just like the written exam or whatever. But the written exam, the questions, she's like going through. She said she'd failed like 9 times or 10 times in the past. And like, at first I thought she was just fucking retarded, you know. And she's not the smartest, but like, she's and she shows me the questions, and they're just all trick questions, you know. And it's just about wording and stuff like that. And even if like, you know, like what they said, you know, they throw. What Wellman says, you know, they throw random bullets, bullshit in there. Yeah, it's literally that, right? It's just about wording and stuff like that, and they're all trick questions. But anyways, yeah, that's how tests work in Japan. They're retarded. But man, what was I getting at? Yeah, so I did pass. So I did pass the OPT in 1. Didn't get the highest score. It was mostly because on the listening section, I didn't know how the questions would be formatted. I didn't know. I didn't expect all of them to be trick questions. I thought there would be a few here and there. So I was kind of, I was not taking notes on most of them. And then I just completely got fucked because also I don't have a good memory. So that's another thing. Like, you know, a lot of it could not have to do with Japanese at all, right? Like you could be good at Japanese, but then listen to conversation and then just forget what someone says. And it has nothing to do, you know, that's why a good skill in life, and this isn't advice necessarily about Japanese or whatever, but a good skill in life is just ask questions and just and ask the people to repeat themselves. Even if you understand what they say, ask them to repeat themselves. Even in English, you do this actually unwillingly, unconsciously or whatever. And most people don't know it, right? But like all the time, like if I said something to someone, right, and they'd be like, "Huh?" But then if you wait like 5 to 10 seconds, right, after they say "huh," they'll answer the question that you first asked because they completely understood it. They knew what you were saying, but they said, huh, because it's like natural reflex to get someone to repeat themselves so that you have like 100% guaranteed understanding of what they say. But in reality, like, you understood. So it's the same thing, but you do it in Japanese. Like, a lot of people, they don't do that in Japanese, and then they end up forgetting what people say. And that's what I did for a while. But now I just ask questions. Like, I always just ask people to repeat themselves. So that's a bit of advice, I guess. Just like you do in English, you know, like, you know, you just say "nante" or "e," you know, or you say "sumimasen, mou ichido," you know, and then get them to repeat themselves, and then and that way it's easier. But in the test, obviously you can't do that. You can only listen to it one time. But as far as my score goes, I think it was 180 points, and I got like 120, so I barely passed, really. But that was mostly on the listening section. Everything else, I did pretty good. On the reading section, they had like some really weird paragraphs. There was like some philosophical shit and stuff like that. And then it was like, what do you think the author? It was like the questions was like, what do you think the author meant when they wrote this? You know, and it's like, well, it's a philosophical paragraph. And you're asking me what the author meant. Like, that could be a billion different things, right? So, but anyways, yeah, I did pass, but it doesn't really mean much, I guess. It's just a fucking test. So another bit of advice, yeah, is don't worry about that shit too, because no one really asks if you can speak Japanese, just like Katsumoto said too. I think he said this in somewhere, but just because you have JLPT and one, oh yeah, I think he said like, I don't think he'd done JLPT or whatever, but he had a job at Sony or some shit like that. I don't know, but it really doesn't matter. Like, no, companies won't ask you. Maybe it's more just like a plus if you have it on your resume. This person. Some places, yeah, they will require it, but most of those places are places that hire foreigners anyways regularly, and so that's like a good. If you have it on there, it's like a good, you know, determiner or whatever. Like, oh, this person definitely speaks Japanese, whereas this person doesn't have anything. So then you'd have to interview them to be able to tell if they actually spoke Japanese or not. All right, give me a second. I gotta go take a piss, and then I'll come back. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, F the JLPT. I'm gonna practice riding A so I can get a motorcycle. Exactly. I swear to God, like, the thing is, if you come to Japan, and you're not as lucky as how I was. So basically, in Japan, I'll make a video about this hopefully at some point. But there's only like 3 different countries where if you have a license you can convert your foreign license to a Japanese license without having to do any tests, driving tests or written tests or whatever. And one of those, like 3 or 4, or I don't remember how many, but it was under 10. One of those countries and like places was Washington, and I had a Washington license. And I didn't even live in Washington for that long, but I just so happened to get my license in Washington, so I was really lucky. And so I was able to transfer it without having to do any tests or whatever. But if you're not that lucky, you're going to have to do that same exact test, the Texas Kinsa or whatever. And you're going to have, not only that, but you're going to have to do the actual driving test, which they're going to fuck you about. It's probably going to be way more stricter. Also, it's going to cost you loads of money because Japan is like notorious for having some of the most expensive, it just costs an insane amount to get your driver's license in Japan. So unfortunately, if you don't, I will, this is a big thing I'll recommend now. If you have a license in a foreign country, get an international driver license, or international driving permit before you come to Japan. And that way you can drive for a year with your foreign license. That is very important. Do not forget about it. It's like $20. And then you can drive in Japan. And even if you have no plans on driving in Japan, you're like, oh, I'm just going to, if you're only going to be in Japan for like a year or something like that, and you're like, I don't need to drive or whatever, I'll just use public transport. Just fucking get it. If you have a license, just get it. Yeah, so fuck, what was I on about? So I guess back to kind of like my AJATT experience, I guess, or AJATT journey. Yeah, things kind of started slowing down, and then so basically, how I'll kind of put this. Any tips for new AJATTers? Okay, we'll get to this question first, then I'll get to that. Any tips for new AJATTers? Probably the biggest tip, I guess, is just to read AJATT. A lot of people don't read AJATT. A lot of people just they hear about AJATT, like the name, but they don't read it. Like on my other videos or whatever, in the comments, there's like, who's Katsumoto? What is AJATT? So like people understand, or sometimes people understand like what AJATT is, just like by the acronym, just like the literal meaning, like, oh yeah, all Japanese all the time, and they understand it's like a method to learn Japanese, but they don't read AJATT, so they don't really fully get the gist of it. Just go and take like one day out of your time. Like you're gonna spend like multiple years, and then it's a huge fucking commitment if you're gonna do AJATT, if you're gonna learn Japanese. Learning any language is a huge commitment. Just go and take like a day or two and read all of the articles in AJATT. Maybe watch like some of the core videos. Like I would watch Matt versus Japan's, the 3-hour video, the notorious one that everyone likes to quote and stuff like that. I would go and watch that, maybe some of his other videos, and kind of get just a grasp on like what it is. Table of contents is king. Yeah, read all of it, the whole table of contents. And then the next thing is, I would say this: what is your goals? That is like the most important thing, really. Why are you even learning Japanese in the first place? And this is where, again, I'll just get into one of the many kind of core advice I have for people out here, and I wanted to discuss kind of in this AJATT finale. I mentioned it just a second ago, but learning Japanese is a huge commitment, right? Most people, if you're really learning Japanese, it's probably because you want to live in Japan. But this is the big thing: is most people, they get to the point where they're like, oh, I want to live in Japan, so I'm gonna learn Japanese. But they don't even get to the core root of it. Like, why do you even want to live in Japan? This is where you need to think. And not to be negative, not to be whatever, but this is just the reality of it. Is like, no matter what you look at it, anything, any hobby out there, any whatever, everyone's gonna look at it with the rose. What is it? The rose glass. What's the phrase? I forget. But it all looks, great. It's like the grass is sunnier on the other side. It's pretty much like that, right? Like everything looks amazing from the outside, and not to say it's not when you get here, but it's definitely not. It's definitely not as perfect as you imagine, especially if you're like most AJATTers that I know personally who kind of got into it when they're still young in their teens or whatever. Even if you're in your early 20s, there's plenty of people. So my big advice, I guess, is if you're doing AJATT because you plan on living in Japan someday, you should really do some kind of how'd you say, not soul searching, but you should really like dig deep and like try and find if coming to Japan is really what you want or not. And if it is, what are you going to do? You should always have a backup plan. It's not this perfect place that will solve your problems. Yeah, it's not this perfect place. But there's like some serious things. Like a lot of people, like including myself, like I always knew because like I wasn't stupid, I would look up videos and I'd watch like the negative stuff about Japan, like, which is, by the way, the negative stuff about Japan, I'll just get it off the bat. Work. The biggest factor that is going to make you hate Japan is probably work. Probably the culture around work. And when you think about it, that's fucking huge for a country. Like if you're planning on living in long term, if work is shit and work culture is shit, that's probably not gonna be a good thing. Because think about it, human beings, yeah, if you're in the fucking 21st century, yeah, we work like 80% of the time. You're pretty much at work all the time. So if the work culture is shit, the work politics are shit, the company culture is shit, and that's pretty much your lifestyle, right? Because you're working all the time. So that's fucking massive, right? And it is almost unarguably shit. Most people who have experienced other things and then come to Japan to work here will probably tell you the same thing. Does that mean everything is shit? Like every company or every job or, all work circumstances are shit here? No, but most are. And you'll probably not like it. I mean, it depends on where you come from. If you come from, I don't know, but there's very little countries that are like way worse than Japan that I know of, at least. There's countries that are definitely worse, but Japan's pretty bad in terms of like work culture and stuff like that. And it doesn't seem bad from the out. It doesn't seem that bad. Like, it seems bad, but it doesn't seem that bad from the outside. When you come here, the whole like perception on work in general is just different. The way people think and stuff like that. This is actually like what Japanese people have told me and stuff like that. But in terms of priorities for a Japanese person, so you know how like in the Western world or whatever, like priorities in terms of your life, like the big goal, like what are your priorities? Family is probably the biggest priority for most people in the West, right? That is like pretty much what everyone say. Like, would you put your wife or your job first? That's like a no-brainer. Everyone say their wife, yeah. In Japan, it's not. Work is like your first priority, and then like some people, yeah, they'll say family is, but like most people, the way they act, work is their first priority. It's like their number one priority all the time. And then even below family, there's like something else, I forget. But yeah, it's the perception is fucked. And then what else? Oh yeah, number 2. This is a big thing. If you're from America, we got a word, Karen. Yeah, Karens. If you don't like Karens in America, you're not going to like Japan probably, because everyone is a Karen. Literally, if you guys don't know what Karen means, it just means just people that like to complain and will basically rat you out or just complain about fucking anything. Yeah, really, I trust me, like anywhere you go here, if you don't like Karens, Japan's going to be a hard place. Especially like, see, and the thing is like, like in my case, I'm part of the reason why I moved out into the countryside. Now I'm so deep in the countryside now. It's because I wanted to get away from that. But in the countryside, there's a whole different level of Karens. This is another thing I'll get into, but like, so in Japan, right, there's like, you've got like Tokai, right, city area, and then you've got like Inaka, right, countryside, yeah. The reality is that both are fucked in their own individual ways, right? So there's really hardly any like good grounds. Like in America, there'd be like the suburban area or whatever, where it kind of like you kind of get the best of both worlds in a way. There's not really so much of a thing like that. There is like places that are kind of similar, but it's not really. It's like in the city area, there's way less. There's still a lot of fucking old people because Japan's like population is like the average age is like 50 or whatever. But there's way more young people, and I've noticed now most of the younger people in Japan, they have kind of more like a westernized view, and so there's way less Karens amongst the younger people in Japan. And if anything, they're like kind of Americans in the sense that like they want to listen to music at night and then not get complained out there, complained by their neighbors or whatever. But at the same time, there's also the fact that it's the city, and so everything is so absolutely close to each other. So, but, I mean, this is kind of like, you don't need to know much about Japan to know this, but the cities in Japan are fucked. I mean, like, you pay like basically, maybe $1,000. I'm just gonna convert this to dollars if you guys understand. But $1,000 and you get a 1-bedroom apartment. But it's not even one. It's like a studio, but it's absolutely tiny. It's like a closet, right? If you live in like Osaka, Tokyo, whatever. And $1,000, that might seem cheap, but in Japan, your entire salary is like literally $1,000 or maybe a little bit over. So that's a fucking lot. It's over like 50-60% of your whole income for most people. So you pay loads basically to get almost nothing. And then the walls are paper thin, and the people around you are right there. And even though it's a city, like I said, there's still loads of fucking old people, no matter where you go in Japan. That's another thing. it's very depressing. No matter where you go in Japan, if you go to supermarket, go shopping mall, go anywhere in Japan, it's like 80% old people. And even if they're like kind of younger people, they'll still complain, and you will get loads of complaints. And then it's like in America, it's like people like threaten to call the cops and stuff like that. But like in Japan, like in America, if you did that, the cops would probably get mad at the person because like you're wasting their time. But in Japan, like that is literally like the cops, that's like their job. Because I mean, in a way, it's kind of a good thing because they don't have like, there's no like school shootings or whatever. So cops aren't busy doing that. And they don't really have much other things to do other than like traffic, shit, So basically their job is to come and deal with the Karens and complaining about whatever. And they're going to support the Karens. If you're making even just a little bit of noise or whatever, they'll support, and they will literally call the cops. I haven't gotten the cops called on me before, but I will say this too. If you can speak Japanese, you can get yourself out of a lot of things. If you can't speak Japanese, you might get kind of like the gaijin card, a lot of people say, or you might get fucked because like I said, you can't talk yourself out of it. I haven't got the cops called on me, but I've had like a few arguments with people. I will say this, I've never lived fully in like Osaka or whatever, and I would never want to. When I first came to Japan, within the first like month or two, I was doing this air conditioning gig where I would basically set up these mini two split air conditioners or whatever, which is what they have in Japan. And that's kind of like, in Japan they say that's gemba no shigoto. It's like kind of hard labor work, because it was, and it's like in the hot summer or whatever. And part of the job meant that I would go all over. I had a work partner. He was older than my dad. He was like in his 40s or whatever. And he was a really cool guy, awesome guy. And we'd go in his K truck, and we'd go to the customers' houses, and they'd be all over the place. And mostly in the cities. They'd be like in Osaka or whatever, like in the actual big city area. And and I'd see the places. I heard people in Osaka treat gaijin better. There is a lot of gaijin in Osaka. It really depends. Also, that is a good thing. Like, a lot of people say like Osaka people are nicer than Tokyo people. I've never been to Tokyo, so I can't compare it. I've been here for almost 2 years now, and I still haven't been to Tokyo. So I do want to go to Tokyo at some point. But don't get me wrong, still there's lots of assholes in Osaka. I will say one thing that I get from Osaka is people in Osaka are very like, they're fucking crazy, and you can't trust them. And there's a lots of like, because there's more young, maybe it's because there's more young people, but the shit they do is like, it's more like, it's more kind of like America, people just walking the streets and like screaming and shit like that. And then people like riding on the back of people's bicycles, futari nori, jitensha futari nori, which is like obviously it's like illegal and shit like that. Obviously there's more of like, Bolso or whatever, which is, like with the bikes and shit and the revving the engine late at night and shit like that. That's kind of the impression I get from Osaka. There's people, they're more like, the level of the people are kind of like lower, if that makes sense. Probably because it's more young people, I don't know. And probably because they have like, there's no really nature and shit that they can do there. But that's like a different story, I guess. But, But yeah, I was doing the air conditioning job, and I would see some of these people's houses, and it's like, again, they live in closets. Their neighbors are like whatever, and the rent is so expensive. Osaka is a fun place. Yeah, no, it is a fun place. Yeah, I've only been there a few times. I mean, I live really close. I live in Wakayama, so there's a prefecture right below it, but I don't go there too often because I feel like it is, I don't know, it's for a different type of person. It's not necessarily for me. But if you're like someone who likes, like my friend Max, he likes going to clubs and stuff like that. And so if you're like that, you would really like Osaka. But not necessarily. Maybe I'll talk about some different video or whatever. But when I was like young, when I was still doing AJATT or whatever, and even then, like even before then, I've always been like, up until kind of recently, I've always been really like an indoor type of person, and I would always be indoor. and be playing video games. Like before I started doing the Japanese thing, I was addicted to video games like most other kids when I was like 12, 13, and I'd be playing video games till it was like 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever. And then after that, it was Japanese and stuff like that. So for like a good chunk of my life, and then also the entire period of high school, like I said, I was doing online school, so I was in my house all the time, whatever. I'd never leave, and then so I was basically just a hermit crab for a good chunk of my life. And so the past like 2 or 3 years, I've basically been like I don't like being inside that much. I'm like pretty much always outside now, or if I'm inside, I have to be doing some like work, study, or I have to be like, forcing myself to have some sort of entertainment like YouTube or some shit like that. Otherwise, I'd rather be outside and doing stuff. And I'm way more into like the outdoors and stuff like now. I just posted a video where I went camping next to the river with Max and a good friend of mine. His name's Alec. He's from Osaka. He's actually from Nepal. He was born in Nepal and raised in Japan. So he's pretty cool. But anyways, different topic. I should probably get back onto the AJATT thing. So, you're saying good advice for new AJATTers. Yeah. Read the table of contents. Think deeply about your goals, because it's a huge commitment. I mean, yeah, could you do it and then stop in a year? Yeah, but then it's like, what's the point? There's really... that's another thing, too. I would say you need to kind of look at it as like, okay, if I'm going to start, I'm going to do it for like the next 2 to 4 years or something like that. In order for you to get really, and this is another maybe big advice, I guess. In my opinion, it takes about, if you do hardcore AJATT within 2 years, you can get fluent. That's my opinion. But if you want to get actually like pretty good, 4 to 5 years. That doesn't have to be hardcore. You just have to be like doing AJATT, studying Japanese. But yeah, about 4 to 5 years, and then you'll be fine. You'll be easily passed in one level if that's what you want to use. You'll be able to work at a lot of companies. But even then, you'll still need to live in Japan, because there's some things that, no matter how much Japanese you'll know, it's more about how Japanese you can be, if that makes sense. And like understanding all the different concepts and stuff like that. And, like the social principles and stuff that are in Japan, which is a whole different level. Again, it's like huge commitment. Huge commitment. It's not just learning Japanese. You have to learn how to be Japanese, how to talk to Japanese people, how to not offend people, how to be funny, how to keep a conversation going. I think Matt talks about that too, because just a whole different skill other than just Japanese is communication in general. So that's another thing. And it's slightly different than in English too, because again, the whole culture is different, right? So yeah, think about that. It's a huge commitment, and have a backup plan. Always have a backup plan with anything. Like I got lucky in the fact that, I found my current wife, that sounds weird, but my girlfriend at the time, who's now my current wife, there we go. Only been married once. But even with the spouse visa now, I will say that like the spouse visa was good in the sense that I'm in Japan now, I guess, but the job that I'm doing now, and the skills that I built since coming to Japan, my company would probably easily be willing to sponsor me a visa if I wanted that, but I wouldn't want that because the spouse visa is better anyways. But like the question, what was it? Was it WAMU or was it? Detritus JP. I think you should just come to Japan, man. Unless you're already in college or if you have some shit going on where you're at, because things will work out. But you need to have a backup plan. You need to have money. You need to be able to speak Japanese. Yeah, that's it. But in like my case, like, if you go through back my videos and kind of like search through my timeline or whatever of my life, I guess, you'll find that, and I talked about this, and other stuff, but, yeah, so during the corona time, this is a big thing. During the coronavirus era, whatever, right? was like 2 or 3 years where Japan was basically just completely fucking locked down. Couldn't go. Couldn't see my girlfriend. She couldn't come here. And it was fucked. And it was probably one of the most depressed times I was ever. Because not only could I not see her, but just in general, like, things were just not going fucking good at all. And I had no other plans. And all the plans that I had were completely fucked because of it. And most people got fucked, you know, by the corona shit, right? So, yeah, I had nothing else that I really wanted. And so, at the time, best friend Max, you know, we were talking a lot. And, you know, good friend then. He's still a good friend now. But it was like, I really, you know, the plan was to go to Japan, but I couldn't go to Japan because it kept the borders fucking closed. And I had nothing else. So I was like, fuck it. Well, maybe I'll just go to the UK. And then him and his family were nice enough to let me stay and live with them. And it was supposed to only be temporarily because the idea was just to stay there. And then the second the borders opened would be fly over there and whatever. But it ended up being like 6 months, or not 6 months. It was like 5 months or whatever. But yeah, I lived in the UK with them. But, you know, it just goes to show that, you know, like, at the time, it was like I had no other plans, but I knew I wanted to go to Japan. But it was kind of like a detour. But I think it was important for me to have taken action at the time and to have done something. Yo, you ain't say you went to the UK. Oh, I didn't. I think I have a video on my channel. Yeah, no, I've got some videos, you know, like, my time in the UK is running out. I made that video or whatever. But yeah, so, I don't know if I wouldn't have mentioned this. It was after, it was definitely after my, my first AJATT live stream that I made. Because that was actually the video where I'd met Max in the first place. He actually commented there, and that's how I met him. I met him. And, yeah, and when you watch that live stream, it's actually pretty surreal because that was kind of like the turning point in a lot of things. Because you can see like everything I was talking about was very real and it was very immediate at the time. It was like all my plans, you know, like all my plans were kind of getting screwed over because of coronavirus shit. And then, yeah, I'd met Max, you know, became really good friends. We would talk pretty much every day. And, you know, and he also wanted to go to Japan, but, you know, again, coronavirus bullshit. And I talked to him, whatever. It doesn't show for me. Oh, really? That's strange. Well, I'll check again, but it should be public. Hi, guys. This is Lucas, or Duke. It should be public. It's my time in the UK is running out. Future plans, ideas for videos, AJATT, and more, blah, blah, blah. It's like a 40-minute video. I'm walking around in the UK in the video, and I was talking about shit, but... Anywho, if you're somewhere, that's another bit of advice, I guess. If you're someone out here, out there, and you're like, you know, you kind of struggle, you know, not just with Japanese, but, you know, you're like, I don't know what to do with my life, whatever, but I have something that I would like to do. Oh, I thought it was a stream. Oh, no, it's not a stream. I think one of them was a stream, but I also have a video where it's like, I made like this weird thumbnail. Live. Oh yeah, moving back to America. Possibly moving back to America. That is a stream. And I have that. And that was also taken in the UK too. But yeah, so basically what happened was the borders never opened for Japan. And so I stayed in the UK for about 5-6 months, but my visa for the UK was running out. And yeah, I just kind of felt bad in general too because I'd been living there rent-free at Max's place with his parents and shit like that. And I couldn't get a job. I tried to work illegally with no visa. I got the interview or whatever, but then, you know, of course, when they found out I had no visa, I couldn't work. So I couldn't even make any money and didn't really have much savings. And I felt just didn't feel right, you know. And then, of course, my visa was running out too. And again, the borders weren't opening for Japan. So I ended up having to go back to America. And I decided to go back to... But I didn't go back to where I'm originally from, which is Florida. Which is strange to me now, but at the time it was because I wanted to kind of experience something new. So I went to Washington, which I don't know why. I've always had some interest in Washington. But I talk about it in that video too, I think. But it's a whole kind of story. There's a lot of like lore behind behind everything that happened since I came to Japan. But yeah, I found this ad on Facebook Marketplace, and there was this Japanese girl who was like this study abroad, whatever, and she made a post about like searching for a roommate, and it was really cheap, and Washington's normally really expensive, and so it kind of worked out because it was like I think I must have talked about this in somewhere, but it worked out because originally, I messaged her and I was like, hey, I'm interested in moving, I'm living in the UK now, but I'm interested in moving, to Washington, and I could be a roommate or whatever. It was like super cheap. When I say super cheap, I mean Washington is so expensive, like the rent and stuff like that. Inflation is just insane. So you couldn't find anywhere. It's pretty much impossible to live on your own. But even for like roommates, like room share, it was pretty cheap. And it ended up working out because I spoke to her in Japanese, and I told her my whole like situation or whatever. And there was actually like 2 people before me who had asked, who were like trying to move in or whatever. But so I thought I had no chance, but I think it's because I explained myself in Japanese. And then yeah, she let me go in, and I signed all the papers. And then so I lived in Washington for a bit, worked at Amazon warehouse. Fucking miserable, hated it. And then and again, my whole life basically up until I came to Japan was just doing everything to get to Japan, I guess, basically. Free output practice too, huh? Yeah, it was free out. Yeah, you could say that. She was really good at English though. She's like probably one of the best people, best Japanese people that I've seen speaking English. That doesn't make sense. She's really good at English. But yeah, she was really supportive because I told her about my whole situation, how I'm trying to move to Japan, go and be with my girlfriend and stuff like that, and all that, and so all English all the time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think she'd already been there for like 2 or 3 years. She was like in her last year of university or whatever. But yeah, it was fucking. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty miserable time. When I was in Washington, because I was just working all the time. But I managed to save up a lot of money. And then eventually the borders did finally open. Or actually, no, that's not how it happened, actually. The borders never fucking opened whenever I was still in Washington. I waited like, I was working there for about 8 to 9 months or some shit like that. Or maybe a little longer. Just working all the time at Amazon. When I was working at Amazon, they had, I was still doing AJATT around this time too. Yeah, so I was still doing... So actually probably around like... So even after I left the UK, when I was still back in America, basically up until the point where me and my wife were like living together, I was still doing AJATT, I think. So yeah. Anyways, like 4 to 5 years or whatever. But yeah, I was kind of doing AJATT, but even then I didn't really have much time because I was just working all the time. So at Amazon, they had like this optional like overtime shit that you could do. But the hours were long anyways. It was like 10 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours a day. But there was only 4 days in a work week, which was kind of like good. But at the same time, like I had no car, so I would just take the bus, and the bus took an hour and a half one way. So it was like 10 hours a normal work day, plus 3 hours transportation, 13 hours a day. So I'd get home, I'd just take a shower, go straight to sleep. And then on top of that, I would always choose the optional overtime. So I literally worked myself like almost to death. I worked like 70, 80 hours a week. My feet had like horrible blisters and shit because you're just standing up and walking all the time. There's no sitting when you're at an Amazon. If you want to know how shit it is working at an Amazon warehouse, you can watch a bunch of videos. There's a gazillion out there. But it was shit. But I did save up a lot of money. I had nearly like 9K, maybe 10K saved up. It's the most money I've ever saved up in my entire life. And I also it's because I never spent any money. I had no like desire to spend any money, but I was severely depressed at the time. Like I was like really fucking depressed. I was down. But yeah, I managed to hang on a little bit longer. The borders never opened while I was in Washington, but what did happen was the American borders finally opened. I think this is what happened. And then the American borders opened up or whatever, and then so basically the story with me and my wife is obviously we met on Health Talk. We were good friends for about a few months, and then I asked her to be my girlfriend, I asked her to be I asked her to be my girlfriend, and then we were together for a little under a year before we first met, and she flew all the way out to Florida, and we went to Universal together, and she stayed with me for about 2 weeks. It was probably one of the best times of my life, happiest times of my life. I really felt like, oh shit, like I fell in love, and it was amazing. And then after that, but I cried myself, pretty much every night to sleep after she left, and then after that I was just trying, to get her to be with me or to be with her, I guess, and that was like pretty much all I was trying to do. So. Things definitely changed a bit whenever, I met my wife, because it became more about her than kind of like me and like just this, arbitrary goal of like moving to Japan. It became more of like moving to Japan, well, mainly moving to Japan to be with her kind of thing. So after that, but after the time, she was with me in Florida, we weren't together for ages, because of the corona shit. So it was like 2 years or whatever. But then, and the next time, like I was trying to go and see her in Japan. Obviously, like I said, I went to the UK, but the borders closed. Went back to America, worked my ass off. Borders still closed. Finally had plenty enough money to go and see her or whatever. The borders were still closed. And I'll mention this too. After the first time I met her, and even after then, before then, like we were together a year. Yeah, it was long distance, but we were already together for over a year or whatever. And then, but after she first came and she was there with me for those 2 weeks, like I knew I wanted to marry her. So that was like, I already knew. I basically knew it. So the borders finally opened up in America, and so, I told her to come and see me in Washington, and that was basically what we finally ended up, getting to see each other again. So she flew out to Washington, after that, this time it wasn't just 2 weeks though. It was the plan was we were just gonna stay together, and we're going to get married in America. And actually for a bit, believe it or not, there was actually an idea to not go to Japan at all, to just live in America. Because like I said, I was already going to marry her after the first time I knew, I met, found the love of my life, like I'm going to get married. There was actually like a time where I was like, oh, like, why do we even need to go to, Japan or whatever? Like, yeah, I wanted to go to Japan, but like, my worry was that Japan was just going to be fucking closed forever. And like, they clearly had like, and I will say this too, the corona time where the borders were closed for some time, if there's anything that tells you what Japan thinks about foreigners, it's that. It's that the period of fucking, they just had everyone fucking locked out of the country. And the fact that even happened in the first place, for how long and whatever, goes to show like it could happen again, and the government really does not give two fucks about you. Like they don't. That was scary for me, and I kind of had like a little bit of a hatred for Japan after that. Not a little bit. I had quite a big amount of hatred, and I was kind of just scared. So I was like, "Fuck it, we'll just get, why don't we just get married here in America? I'll work my ass off or whatever, because she couldn't work or whatever." So basically, what happened was, we were here in Washington for a bit. While we were in Washington, I took her loads of places. I took her to Mount Everest, or not Mount Everest, fucking Mount Rainier. not Mount Everest, fucking shit. Mount Rainier, which is the national fucking mountain or whatever, in Washington. I took her to a bunch of different places. We had a really good time. But I knew I wanted to leave Washington, and I knew I needed to get my own place because I couldn't, be living with my girlfriend and the room that I was renting out, out of a 2-bedroom fucking apartment in Washington with like 3. Oh, by the way, I had 3 roommates when I was in Washington. So yeah, I couldn't just be living full time, with my girlfriend there. So I decided to move back to Florida. My dad was renovating this house. His girlfriend does like real estate. He was renovating this house or whatever. It was still like hardly done, but he said he'd fix it up for me a little bit, and I could come and live there and he'd give me a good deal, I guess. And so I was like, okay, cool. And so I did that. Moved back. Me and my wife moved back there, and it was nice to be back in Florida. That's another thing about Washington. The weather is just fucking shit all the time. It was just rainy and miserable and depressing, whatever. But it was nice to be back in Florida, and I was with my girlfriend, my wife, now, and I was fucking happy. Honestly, I was happy the first time forever. And my dad was there, and it was fucking good times. And I got married in Florida, and so yeah, my wife and I, we actually got married in America, not in Japan. But eventually, the borders did seem like they were going to open. And so, and plus, my wife couldn't really work in America anyways. She doesn't speak good enough English. And also she's got her family back here and stuff like that. And I still did want to come, to come to Japan. So, we went to the embassy in Miami, did a bunch of fucking paperwork. This is still when Corona. So I actually came here when Corona was still, like, the borders were still technically closed. So I had to get a visa, and then I changed my visa to the spousal visa whenever I got here. And I think I have another video on that on my channel, so if you go and watch that. But anyways, that was just a complete rant, I guess, about my my personal life, I guess, and my relationship with my wife and stuff. But yeah, another big bit of advice: find purpose. Find your purpose in Japan. That is a big one. Like, just coming here because you want to come here is like, that's fine. But like, when you're here, at the very least, find your purpose. And if you can't find your purpose, then do some thinking, because maybe Japan's not for you. My best friend Max, he's here, and Max, if you're watching, I'm not trying to bash you at all, but I think, but I do. So basically, Max is here on a working holiday visa, but he's mostly just sat inside his apartment. He's not working. He's not really going many places. And I try and go and hang out with him, and we have fun when we hang out, right, Max? But at the same time, I do think that he's failed at kind of finding his purpose. He still's got like another 6 months, but I'm not trying to say whatever, but if you can't find your purpose here, then yeah, you definitely need to think. It's still worth coming here, if you ever wanted to come, it doesn't necessarily mean, you don't have to be like full on fucking, okay, I'm gonna live in Japan for the rest of my life, and it's definitely worth coming here just to figure out that maybe it's not for you, because if you had the original, like, interest, the passion or whatever to come to Japan, live in Japan or whatever, you spend all this time learning Japanese, there's no shame in like, this is a big one, yeah, there's no shame at all if you decide to go back or whatever, like, and like, it's not a waste either if you learn Japanese and then you end up going back or whatever to your home country. You get really you could still use Japanese. You can still do all the things you like. You could get a job or whatever that, uses Japanese. Or you could just, speak Japanese, and that's fucking cool anyways. And like, but yeah, you have to find purpose. And then And you're kind of forced to find purpose anyways, because like it's going to be hard to get a visa without purpose. You know, you're either going to have to be married, have a job, go to school. Yeah, this is pretty much it, you know. So, but yeah, keep in mind that there's definitely things that will stray most people off Japan, and they'll probably get to you too, you know, mentally, and it'll be tough. Also, Japan's a very lonely place. The road of mastery will teach you a lot about yourself and something in itself. Yeah, exactly. That's very true, yeah. Yeah, it will definitely teach you about yourself. It will teach you, you know, whether or not, you know, that is something you want to do for the rest of your life. But, you know, nowadays, you know, like, I feel like I appreciate the good things about Japan. Like, there's loads of good things about Japan. Japan's very safe. Everyone says that, right? The food in Japan's really good. There's still like lots of cheap stuff in Japan, even though, you know, the salary is so low and the pay is so bad. There's still lots of like cheap shit in Japan, and the inflation is not. I'll say this is one thing that you can't say about a lot of places in the West nowadays. In Japan, if you have a job, you can survive. You can get, you know, a place. It's not gonna be the nicest place, you know, if you live in a big city or whatever. But if you have a job, you can survive. In America and whatever other places, the inflation's fucked. You could have a job and be fucking homeless. There's plenty of people. I knew people back when I was in Washington shit. People working full-time 40 hours and they're fucking homeless. That's just not something that would happen in Japan. So in that sense, Japan definitely cares about its fucking citizens, I guess. It's, you know, it's people more than America, and I don't know. But maybe that's just an American thing. I don't know. But I think the inflation is fucked anyways. But yeah, it's safe. Food's good. Lots of good cheap shit. It's a beautiful country. Beautiful places to go. Yeah. You should come here though. 100%. If you're doing AJATT, if you're learning Japanese in general, you should come to Japan. It's kind of a waste in my opinion. Like I said, there's people that are doing kind of like less hardcore methods nowadays. And they're like, oh, I don't need whatever. You should still come to Japan. And I think most people should come and, you know, live in Japan for a little bit. Kind of get an idea of it. And, you know, as much as I gave up on the whole study abroad thing when I was still in high school and stuff, but if you're still in high school and you're doing AJATT, this is big advice. I would definitely come, and if you have the money, if your parents are rich or whatever, or if you can work hard enough for it, I would definitely come and do the study abroad thing. Because there's people that I know who've done that. They say it was an amazing time. Maybe it'll give you kind of like a more positive image of Japan than what it really is, because it is kind of a little bit saturated. But it's still good. It'll be a good time, and it'll show you a lot of like the real parts of Japan. Because school in Japan is school is where basically everything, the politics around school and shit like that, and the structure and everything, and the culture around it is the same anywhere you go in like your company. You go to the fucking konbini, not rich or fluent, but looking into the next. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, you don't have to be rich. You just, you know, I think the Mex, there's like scholarships and stuff though, so yeah, that is what it is. It's like scholarships and shit, right? Yeah, I had a friend, I think his name was Michael, and he was interested in, I think he was doing the Mex, and he was like living in Tokyo or whatever. Yeah. So that's a good idea. But yeah, coming here and like in realizing how life is for what it is definitely important. And AJATT is more about just learning Japanese. It really is. That is, if there's anything I want you to take away from this video, AJATT is it's a lifestyle. It shows you how to get really fucking good at anything. Like you know, Wami, what you just said. It's literally like you're learning the road to mastery about one thing. If you learn that, it's basically you're learning and the principles in AJATT apply to any other skill, anything. You know, like the idea of immersing yourself in it 24/7. It applies to anything, right? And not just as a skill in itself, but AJATT as kind of like a philosophy and way of life, if that is kind of getting a little cringy, but it's true. It's way more than just learning Japanese. And like everyone that I met too, like in my personal life and stuff, they always say like, that's so crazy how far you've come. And then, just from like learning Japanese and stuff like that, like you meet loads of fucking people, you go all sorts of different places, like loads of different opportunities that you never would have had, and then now you have and stuff. So, yeah, if you read what Kat said, you can apply that to almost anything. Yeah, exactly. Like, and, I pretty much have, like, I've gained like a lot of different other skills too since I got here, like with work and stuff like that. Like I was saying, CAD and stuff, like computer aided design. This is just a book. It means nothing if you don't understand it. But basically in the realm of engineering and stuff like that, I've gained lots of knowledge, and been at my company now for over a year. So I've gained loads of skills and shit. And I mean, but at the end of the day, I will say, true. This is kind of like my philosophy. But life is not all about achieving, too. Life is about living, and living is about enjoying your life. And so that's another thing. Some people are way too harsh on themselves when they're doing it. So this is more on the advice side, like how we were just talking about advice to like newcomers or beginners just started AJATT. But don't be too hard on yourself, and don't always focus on achieving and stuff like that. Really, like some other people have talked about this too, and I think I've mentioned it too, but there's like this golden time in AJATT. It's like maybe the first year or second year or whatever, where it's just complete bliss, because you can experience, you're basically aware of your constant improvement and growth, and every day you feel like you're getting better and stuff like that, and it's just bliss, it's it's the golden time or whatever. But try and expand that as much as you can, and the only way you can do that is by enjoying the process and not necessarily focusing on achievement all the time. Learning Japanese, it's the same as like anything else in life or whatever. Like there's no point in doing it unless it's fucking fun. That's why Cats makes everything about fun. Like you don't have to use textbooks. You can just watch anime and shit that you'd be watching anyways. And that way it's fun and it's enjoyable and stuff like that. There's really no point in doing anything in life unless you're enjoying it, and it brings you some sort of happiness or fulfillment in some way. So don't stress yourself about it. And I mean, so fluent. Everyone always talks about this, like, after AJATT 5 years, how fluent. So this video is kind of different than that, because this isn't like an update video. This is more of like an advice video and my journey kind of type of video. I'm definitely fluent in Japanese now. Have been for a while. At my native level, no. But I'm good enough where I can speak Wakayama Ben, which is a different type of Hogan inside of Kansai Ben or whatever. But I get mistaken for Japanese people on the phone, and you can do. It's really, after about 2 years of hardcore AJATT, you'll pretty much be good enough where, but also this is another thing. You gotta speak. Big thing in AJATT, you can't speak yet. You gotta speak. Max, again, sorry, I'm not trying to bash you. No speaking practice, sound like a baby. You sound kind of just dumb, and everyone tells you, like, oh, don't speak or whatever. I think that's more of like a Matt versus Japan thing. I think he kind of mentioned that. I don't know. I guess in AJATT, did he mention that in AJATT? Well, I'm sure it's pretty much the same anyways, but you've got to speak. You got to practice. And I think that was kind of one of my strong points from the very beginning, is that I use like Hello Talk, and I would always try and like, I would always just try and speak Japanese as much as I could to get the practice and stuff. like I said, like when I was in Washington, I'd speak to my roommate or whatever, practice, and then even then, like Washington too, there was like loads of I had like a group of Japanese friends, because there's lots of Japanese people in Washington. Basically on the west coast of America, there's loads of Japanese people. But I had like a group of like 6 friends, and Japanese friends, and practice speaking with them. We'd go play Mario Kart. We'd get fucking high and shit because it's Washington, so get high, play Mario Kart and shit, and eat pizza. Yeah, I mean, good times. But yeah, you got to speak and try and, you know, even though like my personality is very introverted, it always has been, but in reality, like the people who get best at languages, and not just languages, right? Because it's more than just languages, but it's about communication. And the people that are the best at communication are extroverts, or fucking extrovert. What the fuck is that? Extroverts. Yeah, that's the right word. Extroverts. What the fuck? Yeah, you got to be social. You got to, you know. And if you can't speak well in English, if you can't have a basic small talk in English, then you should probably sort that out first, because, yeah, I mean, if you can't do that in English, I mean, you're not going to be able to do that in Japanese, you know, even if you speak Japanese. So you got to sort that out. So yeah, in terms of like kind of more like specific advice about like what you should be doing in AJATT to succeed, you got to speak a little bit. You got to practice speaking, pronunciation. It is important. Don't delay it, and don't fall into the myth is that if you speak, you're just gonna somehow come out with all these like weird habits and shit like that. Even if you did, like most people will probably say like they'll either look at you weird or they'll say something. If they're close friends, they'll probably just say like, "Dude, what the fuck are you saying? Like that just sounds weird," you know. So I mean, it'll fix automatically, and combined with like constant listening and stuff, it'll go away. Like you're not gonna have all these weird fucking habits and shit later on. So I wouldn't really worry about that too much. But the most important thing, like I said, practice speaking while constantly listening, and then reading too. Don't forget to read. As far as kanji goes, maybe do RTK once. But even then, you're gonna forget it anyways. Like I'll be honest. Like even now, like I forget how to write like most kanji. I mean, I can write like basic kanji and shit, but and that's only because I have to actually write shit for work. But most people who've done RTK and shit like that, I doubt they could even write basic kanji, like very basic kanji and stuff. The best way to get good at kanji is to write notes in Japanese. That's the best way. Yeah, I didn't do enough practice of that, and that's one thing. If I could go back and I could change, I would take more notes in Japanese. And also, you know, like for example, this is also not a good skill. Taking notes in Japanese is also good if you ever plan on doing translation or interpretation or whatever. Especially if you can listen to like English and then in real time take notes in Japanese. That'd be pretty difficult, I can imagine. If you could do that, that would be like great practice for translation or interpretation, whatever. But yeah, definitely. If you're not doing it already, I'd recommend even just like basic stuff, you know, like but not so much like stuff like shopping lists and stuff. I mean like actual like notes. Like let's say you're studying something or in work or whatever, you have to take notes. Like, you know, your boss, your manager, he wants you to do this, he gives you this task or whatever. Take notes, you know, and yeah, that'll go a long way. And just for memorization too. Oh yeah, if you could go back, is there anything you would change when you was in your hardcore phase? Yeah, well, like I just said, taking notes. I never took notes, or I never even practiced really writing that much. What else? And then I did read quite a bit, but most of my focus was definitely on listening. So I kind of wish I did read a little bit more. And when I say more, I mean like the stuff I read, I wish it was kind of like more advanced. I did read some advanced novels. What was the guy's name? Murakami Haruki or whatever. I read some of his books and shit, but that's not even that advanced, you know. But I do wish I kind of read a little bit more advanced shit. I knew this guy. I can't remember where he's from, like Dutch or whatever. His good friend Nirusu, he used to read like loads of advanced books, like more advanced shit than I'd ever read. And he was way less. He'd been doing AJATT for way less time than I have. So if you could do that, you'll definitely have a better your literal understanding will be a lot better, and you'll have a better vocabulary, which is good. Better vocabulary, just like in English, if you have a better vocabulary, it makes you seem smarter. So it's definitely best for like if you're in interviews and stuff like that. Being able to use big boy words and stuff, that it's just like how it's good in English, it's good in Japanese. So what else? I'm trying to think. Also, there's another thing. I wish I would have made more friends. That might seem like it has nothing to do with with AJATT or Japanese, but I wish I would have made more friends. Literally, like not just like AJATT friends, but like just in general, like Japanese friends, or even just like American friends or other friends. Don't underestimate making friends. Is more important. When you come to Japan, you'll probably be surprised. Making friends is way harder here than it is, and everyone says it, and you're like, nah. Like, maybe you're like an extrovert, or maybe you have some confidence. You're like, nah, I can make some friends. It'll be easy, even in like fucking Tokyo and shit. Also, Tokyo's, millions of people, right? And yet, Tokyo is one of the loneliest places in the world. And like Tokyo's got like way higher suicide rates than any of the fucking countrysides in Japan. So, just because there's loads of people doesn't mean that it's easy to make friends. And it's because everyone's in their own bubble and they've got their own shit going on. It's hard to approach people. It's hard to meet new people. There's no such thing as small talk in Japan. And it's pretty much the way Japan society works. People's friends are like, they're friends because they knew each other since they were in like elementary school, and they have the same friends since, like I said, elementary school, decades they've been friends together, right? So making new friends is not even that very common, and there's not very many places to meet them. You've got like your school or work, but even then you can't really be friends with people at work. And like I said, there's no small talk like there is in America or whatever. So, like little, tiny meaningless conversations that lead to opportunities or meeting new people, it just doesn't really exist here. And people are, like I said, they're just more closed off. So I wish I made more friends when back in hardcore days. Like the common misconception is like the most important thing when you're doing AJATT is to just shut off everyone, even your other AJATT friends, because fuck them, right? Like your idea is just to get as good at Japanese as possible, and that's like the most important thing. But in reality, the most important thing is doing what makes you happy and what's going to give you fulfillment. And if you've got more friends, at the end of the day, that's going to give you more fulfillment. Like, like I've been in Japan, like this is another kind of thing, but like I've been in Japan now for nearly 2 years, and I don't really have very many close Japanese friends. Like I have a few Japanese friends, but none of them are really that close. And like I was just saying about my, how do you say, Nepal, the guy from Nepal, my friend Alec, he's not even Japanese. I mean, he was raised in Japan, but his personality is definitely not Japanese, and he's way closer of a friend than pretty much any of the other Japanese people I know. And like, and at work and shit like too, like that's another thing. If you're young too, if you're in your early 20s and stuff and you come here, yeah, I mean, most people are just fucking old as shit. And even if they're not old, even if they're in like similar age, they're just interests are like way different. And I've noticed if they're over like 30 and they work like a kind of a specific like skilled type of job, they're most likely so invested in their work that nothing else really matters to them, or they don't even think about anything. So it's like work and maybe the occasional like nomikai or like going out and drinking, and that's pretty much the only thing that they're like interested in doing. So yeah, I mean, like where I work currently, you know, yeah, it's hard to relate with, you know, there's one guy who's like 25, and he's the, you know, I work in a small company, so it's not like there's many people anyways, but you know, where I work, which is in the development group, there's 5 engineers, including me, and yeah, the closest one in age to me is 25, and he's like, he has his own fucking like business outside of, you know, his work or whatever. So he's, again, it's just, you know, which is this is a different story, but it's why Japan, it's why people don't have kids and shit here. It's because they're all focused on, like, it's not like family number 1, work number 2, personal life, you know, it's like work and then work, and that's it. And that's, yeah, that's perception here. So difficult to make friends in Japan. Try and make as much friends as you can when you're doing, the thing is, if you're doing AJATT anyways, it's probably because you have a bunch of time on your hands, right? Even if you don't have time on your hands, like I didn't have that much time on my hands. Like I worked, even when I was in high school, I worked 2 jobs and stuff like that, you know, even when I was doing online school. So, you know, I was so busy and shit. And you're probably busy if you're doing AJATT, but you're probably also have a good chunk of time in the day, right? And so if you have that much time, invest in making some friends. And big one. This goes to beginners too. Japanese is so important. Yeah, so fucking important. But Japanese with no other skills, you're a one-trick pony in Japan. You know, you can't do anything. If you can just speak Japanese and you're really fucking good, here's a cookie. That's so like people like Matt versus Japan. I don't know Matt versus Japan. This might be like really whatever. I've spoken to him a few times personally, but I've never met him in real life, so I don't know. But see, in his case, his thing is he's like the language guru, or he's like the new you know, how do you say, spokesperson for AJATT. So that's kind of his thing, right? So in terms of like money and shit, you know, that he can use that. But in his case, if he didn't have that, he'd probably be fucked here in Japan, not gonna lie. Because like I said, just being good at Japanese doesn't get you anywhere really. So being hardcoring AJATT is good, but maybe also trying to hardcore something else, some other thing that could become a skill that you could use, make money, or, you know, just make you happy or whatever. But still, like, even if it's just like a hobby or whatever. Yeah, he's in Japan on a student visa. Yeah, it's not just a visa too, but like, you know, even if you had a work visa, it's like the type of jobs and stuff that you can get. That's nothing. Japan, it's like, you got to think too, you know, there's so many like young undergraduates in Japan for companies to hire. And there's so many like just young Japanese people that are highly skilled in like a bunch of subjects, because they didn't have any fun growing up. They didn't get laid. They didn't get a girlfriend. They didn't, you know, try and have any fun. They just spent all the time studying or whatever, or training and whatever. So there's loads of young, like really skilled people in Japan. So you got to think, why would they hire you? You know, a foreigner who speaks like okay Japanese, but the company really doesn't even need English. That's another thing too. This is a big thing. This has to do with life in Japan. Work at a foreign-based company. So a company that was, that has its main, headquarters in some foreign country, but then they have like their chain or whatever, but then they also have, you know, companies or whatever in Japan. Work there. The pay will be better. The work politics will be better. Be better treatment for foreigners. Yeah, that's the goal for me. Hopefully sometime this year or whatever. I do plan on quitting my job eventually. It's not a bad job, but again, yeah, pay's not great, but so is everywhere in Japan. So I don't know. That's a whole nother video, I guess. But yeah, make friends. Focus on a different skill, or not necessarily a different skill, but a skill, right? Like focus on a skill other than Japanese. Try and build that up. And yeah, build your kind of portfolio in a way that like I said, you know, why, what makes you special, I guess. Not just for like getting jobs, but like just being interested, like just kind of being successful in Japan in general. And I don't just mean like money wise, but if you just like, you know, you can't just like, I don't understand. It's not like what they make it sound on YouTube, you know, like, oh, you're a white guy, you go to Japan, like, you just be fucking famous or whatever, and you just be able to like live because you're like a white guy. It's like, especially like nowadays, like, I don't know, I wasn't in Japan 20, 30 years ago, but I can imagine there's probably way more foreigners than there was like, you know, 20, 30 years ago. So you're not that special anymore. Even if you live in the middle of fucking nowhere, most people have seen foreigners and shit like that, and you know, you gotta have some sort of work. And also, you don't want to be the type of foreigner that is working here in the fucking factories, in the warehouse or whatever. Like, that's another big thing. There's loads of foreigners that are working at these factories and warehouses and shit. You don't want to be like that. You're just basically gonna get taken advantage of. The pay's not gonna be great, and yeah. I can make more advice about kind of like life in Japan too in a different video, but AJATT is the first step for most people, right? Like similar to me, right? Is AJATT's the first step that gets you to Japan, because, you know, you learn Japanese, and then what's the next step, right? Just come to Japan. So, yeah, just, you need to think about it. Real shit, like one says, but I'm trying to think, in terms of other advice. Holy shit, it's already been 2 hours. I'm making this really long. Well, I don't want to get to 3 hours, so we'll have to make this, we'll have to sum this up somehow. But, yeah, I mentioned how AJATT is more, I'm trying to think of things that I wanted to talk about. If you have any more questions on me or anyone else, let me know now so I can answer them. I'm trying to think of things that I wanted to talk. But yeah, oh, I guess again, yeah, AJATT's not meant to last forever. Maybe like at most 5 years, but probably only a few. In reality. I mean, you covered a lot though on pitch accent. Oh yeah, pitch accent, I don't think you should focus on that much, really, to be honest. The reason why I say this is when you come to Japan, when you live here, you're going to pick it up naturally. Because you'll say something, you know, like, for example, it helps, obviously, if you have a Japanese wife, or someone that you speak to, you know, regularly, like on a daily basis. But even if you don't, I mean, you know, wherever you live in Japan, if you live in Fukuoka, you're going to speak Fukuoka-ben, or what do they call it? It's not Fukuoka-ben. It's like, I forget what it is. But if you live in, like, if you live in Wakayama like me, you'll speak like, you know, Kansai-ben or Wakayama-ben, you know. And, you know, there's different Hogen, right? And different Hogen have different pitch accent, right? Like in Kansai-ben, they say like kino, you know, instead of like kino. So stuff like that, you know, you'll just pick up naturally after just being around it. It's just like how, like, you know, Chinese, you know, like the Chinese boy in America, right, who like speaks amazing English, or like he has like a really strong like Southern accent. Have you ever seen like YouTube videos, Chinese guy, and he has like a really Southern American accent? It's like, if the guy lives there for so long, he's gonna sound like that. So I don't think you really need to focus on it too much. Matt versus Japan, he puts like a big emphasis on it. It's more about practicing to speak in general. Just making sure you don't sound like, obviously there's some words, or there's loads of words actually, that will have like the pitch accent or whatever will be the same no matter what dialect it is, whether it's fucking Kansai-ben or whatever. So if you're completely butchering some words, then that's obviously a problem. But in reality, I mean, like, if you've been immersing for long enough, and if you've had enough input, you'll probably know, like, you'll have a gut feeling that you're saying it wrong. And if you don't have the gut feeling that you're saying it wrong, then you probably just, like I said, you don't have enough input. So you need to get more input. But yeah, practice speaking, but don't stress so much about pitch accent. Like, I don't think you need to do any other, like, studying. Like, if you're doing Anki cards, I don't think you need to add pitch accent to the Anki cards. Because if you're going to add pitch accent to the Anki card, you might as well add the whole fucking audio to the whole, like, sentence. You know what I mean? Like, if you have the typical sentence cards or whatever, where you got the sentence on the front and then, like, the definition of the word on the back, and you're going to add the pitch accent to the one specific word, you need to add it to the whole sentence, because it's not going to make sense with just the one word. Sometimes pitch out, it changes too, just, like, based off of the scenario that it's being used, right? This is very common, like the word hashi, right? Hashi. It's like, so you need to have, like, the whole context instead of whatever. So I don't think you should really put too much emphasis on it. I guess Anki too, we can talk about that. Loads of people have different opinions on Anki. I do think Anki is good, and I do think it has helped me, but I don't think you need to continue it for the entire time you're doing AJATT. I think it's really kind of like in the beginning, it's super helpful, especially with, like, the basics and stuff. Probably, like, I don't know how, I probably couldn't give you, like, an exact number, but maybe, like, the first, like, 1,000 or 2,000 sentence cards or whatever you make, maybe it'll probably help way more, because you're basically learning as you're studying. How long did it take you before you could comprehend what you were listening to? Oh, this is a good one. About a year, I'd say. Yeah. Before I could, it depends on, like, most people say, like, in percentages. In a year, I was probably about, like, 60 to 70%, or maybe more, actually, maybe like 70-ish%. After 2 years, I was probably closer to, like, 85-ish. And then after about 3 years, for, like, most things, I was pretty much 90 plus, I'd say. But I was, like I said, I was pretty hardcore. Like, I'd watch, like, 10 to 12 hours worth of anime a day, and I'd make loads of Anki cards and stuff like that, and I would read. So, but if you're pretty hardcore, yeah, I think within, like, a year or two, you can pretty much comprehend most, even just the sounds, like like being able to hear the Japanese sounds and stuff like that. I think that only takes, like, six months or whatever, like 6 months to a year. You can pretty much get that down. With living in Japan, what's your comfort level of your Japanese versus native language? Well, obviously I wouldn't consider Japanese native, but I do feel there's definitely times where I can explain things in Japanese way better than I could explain them in English, especially anything related to work. Anything related to the stuff that I'm doing in work, I could explain way better in Japanese with way more specific vocabulary than in English. And that's just because I don't even, half the words I don't even know what they are in English, because it's like senmon yogo, right? Or like, it's like specific stuff, I do feel like I'm pretty much, I don't know, if you say near native, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's kind of not controversial, but I mean, I'm good enough to the point where I don't strive to become better, if that makes sense. Like, I don't care if I get better. And I don't care at all, actually, about getting better in Japanese. If anything, I feel like it'd be more, I actually feel like I should be studying English. and that's not like, I'm not trying to be corny, but I do think my English level is, like, pretty low. Obviously, I'm native in English, but, like, My vocabulary in English is pretty bad because I haven't read very many books since I started doing AJATT. It's all mostly in Japanese. So I do want to read more like English books and get better. And it would be like, yeah, I don't know. It'd be more beneficial to like focus on communication as a skill in general than specifically trying to fix my Japanese or improve my English or whatever. When did you go monolingual? How much did it help you? When did you go monolingual? So that's kind of like when you think in your target language, right? So, well, I mean, even from the very beginning, I'd say I was, like that's part of kind of what it is in AJATT, by the way, is like when you're constantly immersing yourself in Japanese, like you kind of think of yourself as a Japanese person, and so like when you get like let's say something hurts and instead of saying ow you say itai, ita, stuff like that, and just general thoughts in Japanese. Probably about like 2 years in, I'd say. And how much does it help you? It's more the thought or the uncognitive. Like I said, the thought that you're just Japanese. Like when you get to the point where like now, like, and when you come to Japan too, and if you've been doing AJATT for a while and stuff like that, and it gets normal. Like when things become normal to you, you walk into the konbini or whatever, and everything's just so normal to you, and you're just like a Japanese person, and people just still look at you, and then you kind of have to like look at yourself back and realize like why they're looking at you. Oh wait, I'm a foreigner. Like, but it's I don't think becoming monolingual necessarily helps that much in the fact that it's like now it's when you change your dictionary. Oh yeah, I'm fucked up. In that case, then it definitely it helps loads. And I did that. So I started with Kolbury. Yeah. That was probably whenever I first started making sentence cards. So yeah, because I never made any sentence cards that were in English. I didn't do the only time that I did the flashcards that were from Japanese to English, it was when I was using Memorize. So when I started making sentence cards, they were all in monolingual. So yeah, so probably within the first year, I'd say I did monolingual. And yeah, that definitely helps because obviously if you can do that, then every single word that comes up in the definition for that word is more things for you to study and learn. And if you can understand that, it's like, it's basically just, you're multiplying the growth, by like 10% or 10 times or whatever, rather than just learning a single word and then learning its English equivalent. Also, it doesn't make sense to learn the English equivalent because most of the things have nuances and the English equivalent is not going to give you the correct nuance anyways. So, in my opinion, yeah, a bit of advice, you should definitely go monolingual as soon as possible, probably within the first like year or so. Why don't you like anime anymore? Grew out of it. Never thought you'd get over Orange Road. Well, I'll always love Orange Road. I'll mention I always old anime has a spot in my heart and always will. I should mention I don't like new anime. But that's the thing. It's like all anime now is new anime, and there's no anime now that has kind of the same principles. I don't want to say no because I haven't really watched that much, but I have watched a few recently, and they're just different. The reason why I don't like it is it doesn't capture like the essence of the similar essence of like old anime. So basically, the difference between old anime and new anime is old anime focuses way more about the plot and good storyline and good aesthetics than just amazing looking animation. Where like new anime is just mostly amazing looking animation, but then just like very typical plots. So like Orange Road, right? So it doesn't have a really good animation at all, but the aesthetic is fucking amazing. Also music wise, they choose way better music in the old anime. A little bit of kind of sidetrack. Okay, I recently watched this is about a few months ago. When I first moved into this house, which I'll make a different video, and I didn't have Wi-Fi. I had on my hard drive here. I had like a bunch of anime that I had stored, and one of them was this anime called Monster. If you don't know about it, I think it's like the 80s or some shit. It's an old anime. It is. I'd never watched it. I never even started watching it up until, like I said, when I first moved in this house. I had no Wi-Fi, so I had to watch that for entertainment. Yeah, man. Dr. Tim, my bro. Monster. Fucking banging, and probably one of my favorite animes of all time now. The plot in Monster is amazing. The first, like, few episodes, it kind of gives you it makes you think it's about something else, like, just makes you think it's about, like, a fucking doctor or some shit. But it's amazing, honestly. And that's what I mean. Old anime, their plots are just so much better. But yeah, there's nothing like that nowadays. But anyways, yeah, watch Monster if you haven't already. Amazing anime. And then obviously, yeah, Kimagure Orange Road, Mezou Yukoku, classics. I watched there's this anime called Space Dandy. That was pretty good. What's the most challenging aspect of learning Japanese? The most challenging learning aspect of learning if we're talking about like the technical shit, probably just probably kanji. And everyone says that, but yeah, I mean, it's easy whenever you get used to it, but when you just look at kanji and you have no practice and you have no like beforehand experience, it's just a fucking maze. It makes no sense to you. Now it kind of makes sense when you learn kanji in a systematic kind of way. Like you learn them by the different radicals. Like this radical means this radical that, and then just by looking at a kanji, not only could you tell what that specific kanji means, but then compared to like combined with another kanji, you can tell what the word means, or at least what it probably means. So it's not that difficult. Other than that, in terms of like technical things about learning Japanese, probably like the dialects and shit like that. Yeah, dialects pretty. And then it doesn't matter to you if you go and move to Tokyo or whatever. But if you move to Kansai or any other place that has like a strong dialect or whatever, it's just kind of embarrassing to speak like the typical like Kyojungo or whatever, because everyone's speaking that, so you just kind of sound weird. So yeah, learning that. Ashina Joe, yeah, Ashina Joe is a fucking amazing anime. That was a really good one too. Ashina Joe is like is probably one of the oldest animes I've ever seen. I think it first came out in like 1970s or something like that. Do you have a different perspective in some particular area with AJATT? Well, my whole kind of perception on it in general has kind of changed, and that now I think that not that it's AJATT's definitely not bad in any way, but AJATT should be a limited thing. It should be a limited time thing, and that you shouldn't do it. In my opinion, I don't really think most people should be doing AJATT for more than like 2 to 3 years. And I don't think it says that anywhere. Well, I mean, obviously it said like 18 months, I think, is how much it took him. But I think the idea is just to continue to go on. Ikoku's oldest anime I've seen. I thought Ashina Joe's came out before that one. Hold on, I'm gonna take another piss. Be right back. Marmalade Boy is a pretty good 90s. Oh yeah, Marmalade Boy, also another banger. Yeah, pretty much any of the old anime. I mean, they're all really good. I mean, there's still a lot of ones that I haven't seen yet. So it would be nice to see some of them. But yeah, I'm just not interested in the new ones because the plots are just so bad. Like they have like a remake of like, it's not a remake, but it's like the next part of like Initial D, and now it's like, and it's all like new, but it's just, and they've got like new cars or whatever. The main character is like this British, he's like this foreigner or whatever, and watching that a little bit here and there with my wife, and they're just not that great. I mean, especially compared to like the original Initial D, it's just not that good. So yeah, but yeah, and not just with anime, but a lot of things, they do get old. That's another thing. When you do AJATT, everything, when you first get into it, everything just seems so cool. Same, it's like the whole Japan itself just seems fucking amazing, but things do dull down after time. What's the last piece of content that you found very challenging? I don't even know. Work, anything work related, because it would be complicated. Even in English, because it's just like, it's a senmon tekina, it's like skilled shit. So work, anything that like certain words and stuff, like within these textbooks and stuff, stuff about writing zoom in diagrams, not like the typical Japanese, obviously, but like all the specific words. But yeah, just shit like that. I mean, in terms of just like just normal content that I find challenging. Old people will always be challenging. It doesn't matter. And don't think if you can't understand old people, then you're still not fluent, because old people will always still be challenging. Even now, like I live in the middle of fucking nowhere, right? And there's this old grandma, like down the hill from where I live, and she's very nice lady, but I swear to God, like, she speaks like just, it's like a whole different level. It's like old Wakayama Bin, and it's I can still understand most of what she's saying, but there's times where I can't understand all of it. But yeah, so work and then old people. That's pretty much those are the most challenging things, I think. Now, I'm trying to think. Transitioning from grinding Japanese hardcore to going to Japan and using time efficiently. Was it hard? Not necessarily, because even before I came to Japan, like I said, I was already done doing AJATT. So using time efficiently, it was kind of like a must, like getting a job, making money. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was kind of just, it was kind of natural. I feel like the end of my age, it was kind of like, it wasn't like one day I woke up and I'm like, yeah, I'm done with AJATT. It's more like slowly over after time. It's like, yeah, I think I'm pretty much, sotsugyou, as they say, right? Like you graduated from it, and then you just stop. And then like Anki, there was that one day where I was like, yeah, I'm done with Anki. But other than that, like just the consciously doing AJATT, that just kind of slowly dies off after time. But I think at the beginning it does, for some people, it might feel kind of difficult because you're so used to focusing all your time on Japanese, that transitioning that to spending all your time on some other skill, whatever, it might be kind of difficult. Is it worth the extra effort to get native level in Japanese? That's a great question, and I don't think it is. I think it's not worth it. I would say the same thing about any language, because there's really no benefit that comes from being native, or whatever that means. I mean, even within native level, there's people that are, better, good and not so great, right? Like my sister, for example, I can read some kanji that my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, I guess, Um, I can read some kanji that she can't read. Like there was this time I was putting on the roof carrier. I was setting up the roof carrier for my van, and I was putting it all together, reading the instructions or whatever. And then at the end, I was, asked her to help me to lift it up because you had to lift it up or whatever. And then putting on the final few bolts or whatever. And then she's like, she couldn't read this one kanji, and then I just read it, and then she was having a struggle to read the bottom paragraph too. And it's like, so point is like, first off, like being native level is kind of like, that's kind of arbitrary too. But I would say actually, it's especially for Japanese, there's less benefit because, like for English, for example, if you come to America and live in America, right, the better you are at English, doesn't really change how kind of American you are. You know what I mean? You could speak like no English, and then you could still be, you could still be considered American. But if you if you came from Mexico or whatever, and you spoke really good English or whatever, that that would get you loads of places or whatever. Where in Japan, it doesn't really get you anywhere. Because in Japan, it's very people judge on appearance, and people will look at you. They'll just look straight at you, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're a foreigner." And then even now, sometimes people speak in English to me. But I will say this: when you get good at Japanese, and when you've lived here for a bit, people can tell. I don't know how. It's something to do with. It has to do with just kind of like the way you act, the way you walk, the way you kind of like function. Like like you can just kind of like look at someone and be like, oh yeah, they're used to that. In Japanese, you can look at you and be like, oh yeah, that's not just like some foreigner who just got off the plane. And then so it's definitely less, but there are still times where people just look at me and they'll be like, oh yeah, foreigner speaking. I'll speak broken English or whatever. Or like when I'm with Max, because he's still not there yet. So I'm with Max or whatever, and then I'll go to the convenience or whatever, and then the lady's just trying to explain to us like how to microwave food or some shit in English, in broken English. But yeah, I don't think it's worth the effort to get native level Japanese. Plus, it's a loads of effort. You would never realize how much effort it is, because like there's so many different words. Like think about it in English. Like different names of like dinosaurs and shit like that. Like that stuff, like Japanese people will just know. Because they would have learned it when they were like a kid, but for us, you'd have to learn all these specific vocabulary that means nothing in real life. Like it's just not really useful. And then also like pronunciation to a higher level. And in that case, you would have to focus on pitch accent on a high level. So also thoughts on Anki. Was it even necessary? I do think it was necessary in the beginning. I think it's kind of a good for building structure. But I think you could, honestly, I think it would be safe to say you could quit Anki after like a year and you'd be completely fine without it. Anki is really good for learning kanji. And I did a little bit of it. I dabbled in it. But using Anki to practice taking notes or whatever, with the intent of learning kanji, learning how to write kanji, that is. Anki is a good tool for learning kanji, and then basic vocabulary, and stuff. It's pretty good. I would say pretty, but you don't need it after about like a year or two. It's not, Speaking on native level, is there anything you'd like to improve about your Japanese? I guess just I don't even know if it has to do with Japanese, but like just being good at I wish I could make people laugh a bit more in Japanese. Like some people there's type of people that they'll just like come into a group and they'll just somehow make everyone laugh, and I think that just comes to do with like being very relatable, I guess. Which doesn't really have, it's not necessarily a Japanese thing, but knowing the right times to say something, like Japanese humor is just different. If I could do that, yeah, I think I would maybe I would like to improve in that. But other than that, not really. I mean, there's definitely, don't get me wrong, there's loads of places where I'm not, amazing. But again, like, it's just like the other question, like, the effort that it would take to get there is so much more than the reward that, you would get out of it. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it realistically, it makes sense, right? Like, what really reward comes out of, like, getting extremely fluent? Thoughts about internet community, AJATT, Discord, talking with other learners? Yeah, you should, 100%. It's motivating. It's good. You make friends, just like I was talking about it earlier. You 100% should, and I don't think you should. Obviously, if it gets to the point where you're just talking about, you're just talking all the time, and like you don't spend any time, then yeah. But generally, that's not how it works, right? Because everyone else, your friends or whatever that are also doing AJATT, they want to do AJATT, and they're probably motivating you to do AJATT. So it's like, normally what I found is that it kind of like works itself out. There's like a good balance in between, like, talking with your friends and then also, making sure that you're keeping up with AJATT. So there's really no demerits to it, and there's only benefits. So yeah. But the community, like the AJATT Discords and stuff like that, I feel like you can waste a bit of time on those. I mean, like, one-on-one, like with just friends and stuff, that's good. But like the Discord, like the servers and shit like that, I see loads of people just kind of wasting time asking like questions that they could just kind of find out by doing it, Oh wait, your wife. What do you say? How did you deal with lack of motivation? Oh, you said, oh wait, your wife. No, I mean, in terms of Japanese, I mean, I'll say this: to have a girlfriend in Japanese, you don't need a high level of Japanese. Even just basic conversation, like just, especially over the phone and text and stuff like that, you don't need a high level of Japanese. So I don't think that it's not necessarily having a girlfriend is going to really motivate you. It's motivation is mostly just internal, right? It's or at least like the core motivation, the shit that, like, the actual shit that's going to get you to do stuff. It's like, did you actually really want to do it in the first place? Yes. Well, then you'll find motivation through other shit, But if you didn't want to do it in the first place, then it's going to be impossible to make motivation. So, like, loads of people will say, like, lack motivation or whatever, and I've noticed a lot of these people, they end up quitting because they realize they didn't actually really want to learn Japanese in the first place. There's sometimes, where it's completely fine and it's normal to have, like, low times, but if that's happening, like, constantly over and over again, you should rethink things, because there's a good chance that it's probably just you don't have the internal it's just like a fire, right? Like, you have you've got ashes, and then you've got coal, and there's a bit of fire, right? And that's your motivation. The core is there, and then you throw shit on it, right? Like, let's say I threw Orange Road, my favorite anime that always makes me happy and motivated. I threw that on, and the fire gets hella big, right? And so the fire being my motivation, it gets big, right? But then if you didn't have any fire at all and you just keep throwing shit on the fire, right? It's like, it's not going to get bigger. So, what things can you not acquire from immersion alone? That's another good question. Well, most things obviously you can acquire through immersion alone. Some things, like maybe specific grammar, it would be kind of helpful. I used another resource I used. It was called like Imabi, I think it was called. Yeah, Imabi, which is Kyo, but they read it as like Imabi. It's kind of a weird play on words. But it was like a website that has to do with grammar and explain grammar through these articles and stuff, and they were pretty good. And I'd actually still recommend that today, because it helped explain grammar in an easy way. And yeah, I think grammar is pretty much the only thing that you can't maybe fully acquire. You can obviously acquire, but there's some things where it's like, I know people that have only ever studied through immersion, and sometimes they say things that are just completely grammatically incorrect. So yeah. need some water. Yeah, so finding purpose in Japan, finding a reason to stay in Japan. Thoughts on transitioning from input to high-level output. Well, I don't think there should really be that much of a transition, because I think even from pretty much the beginning, I think you should be outputting at least a little bit practice here and there. I think it is important because, outputting is just as much of a skill as inputting, listening, right? And if you only do one thing, then you're only going to be good at one thing, As far as high-level output, not quite sure what high-level output is. If you're talking about like kind of speaking in more of like a business matter, because like normal conversation or whatever, you'll probably already be kind of somewhat used to that if you've already started from the beginning. In terms of like business speech and stuff like that, it's just practice. You're gonna be shit in the beginning anyways. But yeah, just try and input so you know all the words and the topic and the terms or whatever. And probably practice with your friends or something first, so you don't make whatever. True. How did you get into Japanese reading? So I actually never really read very much. I didn't really read that much manga, actually. A lot of people started manga, but I didn't really like manga, to be honest. So I just read novels and shit, and I started off with light novels. So, what was the one? There's I have like an Annie list and like a book meter or whatever, so you can on my anime, but I haven't updated in ages because I said don't even watch anime or whatever. I haven't really read much books recently, so. But I'm forgetting the name. Was it Suzuki no? I can't remember, but basically light novels of animes and shit that I would watch. That's how I started off, and then I'd start going on to bigger novels. Read a few Japanese books that were translated from English books that I liked, like The Alchemist. It's a great book in English. Read that one. And then like a lot of the books from the Murakami Haruki guy. And then and then a bunch of horror shit, like horror and suspense shit, and then also like nonfiction stuff, like stuff that interested me. There was a book Yamaoka Nito, which I really liked. That book is also set in Wakayama. It's about a bunch of NEETs, where like kind of people who, how do you say, no job, no work or whatever, like whatever, and they like lived up in the mountains, and they lived for like less than $100 or $200 a month or some shit. It's a real place. I actually know exactly where it is, and it's in Wakayama. It's not even that far from me. It's like a 3-hour drive. You ever got into visual novels? Nope. I think I might have played once. There was like the Steins Gate one, and I don't even think I finished it. I think I stopped. But I do think that is a really good. That's really good for, especially for people who don't really necessarily like reading, but like anime and like kind of the video games and shit like that. I think that is a really good way for people to get into reading, I guess. And it is definitely good immersion, good practice material. So yeah, visual novels, I think is good. And then also the read Muramasa, bro. You would love it. What is that? Muramasa. I think I've heard of it. Would be cool to see. Is that what Matt did? Like is that the visual novel thing? It's called Full Daimon Muramasa. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I saw the video where Matt read that. Yeah, I'm sure there'd probably be words and shit that I couldn't read in here. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, apparently the best visual novels. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, like also in terms of anime, like the Monogatari series, that anime is also really good for Japanese. Best visual novel, in my opinion. You would like it if you care a lot about good story. It's hard as fuck vocab wise. Okay. Interesting. Trying to think any other advice I have. Favorite anime that is not mainstream, not Attack on Titan, Death Note, etc. Well, my favorite anime of all time is Orange Road. Most people probably know that. What other ones I can think of? Maybe go to my any list. I wonder if I even have. Oh, it's probably not even on this computer. Wait, do I have it on here? Trying to think of one that I haven't said in the past. I've watched quite a bit of anime in my time. Twitter, book meter. Oh, why do I not have any list on here? Man, I wish I could find my anime list because there's loads of like good anime that are not mainstream that I've watched. How to tackle incomprehensible sentences. Incomprehensible sentences. Ooh, is that like spoken sentences or written sentences? If it's spoken, well, the answer would be to just ask the person again to repeat it until you can understand, and then break down or ask them what they mean. If it's written down, when you're reading something like a light novel. Oh, okay. Well, normally, I think there was this word called I+1. Can't remember if that's from AJATT or from MIA or whatever it is. But basically, for me, your analyst is Skirin, by the way. Oh, thanks. I don't even know mine. Yeah. I'm not logged into this on this computer, so I don't know if I type it in. Skirin analyst. Oh, there it is. I found it. What do I have ranked? Anyways, yeah. So for me, it'd basically be like I+1 in the sense that if I read a sentence, there'd mostly be only one word that I really didn't understand, and that one word would cause me to not understand the full sentence. So normally just by reading that one word, then I could kind of get the general gist of the sentence. That's normally, from my experience, that's what I did. And if I didn't understand, if there was like multiple words in a single sentence that I didn't understand, then I would skip it. I would only do ones that I'd only have one, and to the point where most sentences I would only have one. And I think that's the best way. I wouldn't look up every single word in the sentence that you don't understand. I would just, if there's so many words in the sentence that you don't understand, then it's just maybe read something that's lighter or something that's easier, or input more before you read, because the best time where you're going to make the most growth, the most progress, is if everything's I+1. So one word in a sentence that you don't know, look it up, make a sentence card, boom, you get the full definition of the sentence. Let's see, anime, what do I got? How can I see my ratings? What is this? Watching, completed. Oh, Golden Boy, that was a good anime. Golden Boy was a good one. Oh, I see. What would you change about yourself? What does personal development look like for you? Ooh. Change myself. Well, is this like, if it's not related necessarily to Japanese, probably basically, I think the most important thing is to be as nice as you can to other people, and to help people out. And yeah, and I think so that's probably the biggest thing. I feel like sometimes I get stressed and I can kind of outlash, but yeah, being nice, being calm, also being calm. What's the word? See, I'm forgetting English. Calm-minded, calm. Basically, deise. How do you say deise? Deise. Well, yeah, it's just calm, but it's different. Presence of mind. Okay, that's good. Mindfulness. Yeah. Being more mindful, I guess. I think that's most people could benefit off that. I definitely could be more benefit off that. I will say I stopped meditating like ages ago. I used to meditate. I did it for a while. If I could get back into that, that would be really good. It's kind of hard because I'm working all the time, so hard to make time for it. But I do think it is really beneficial. Also, since it is 2024 now, I do should start making New Year's resolutions. I should have already made them, but yeah, this year I definitely want to see my dad. Hopefully, get my dad over to Japan. I want to save a bit of money. Yeah, like I said, become more mindful. Hopefully, try and see if I can find a better job. One that's maybe a little less stressful. And yeah, maybe even go on a trip. Definitely want to go on a couple trips in Japan, because I've barely seen a lot of Japan. I've been here for nearly 2 years, and I've only really seen like places in Kansai. And even in Kansai, I've been to Osaka, I've been to Wakayama, obviously. I've been a lot of places in Wakayama, most places in Wakayama. I've been to Nara. Haven't been to Mie yet. Yeah, so I mean, I've barely seen anything. So yeah, but yeah, personal development. I think just mainly to become more mindful and try and be a nice person, and then yeah, make more friends. I think that's very important. Final advice for AJATT. Yeah, don't think of AJATT as something that's going to last forever. What are your next steps with Japanese? Any? Nope. Yeah, nothing. Like I said, not necessarily that there's no steps for Japanese, but I'm not consciously aware of them. And I think that's what's important. It's kind of what I wanted to say in this video is you get to a point where you just kind of you graduated from it, and so work your ass off to get to a super high level, and then if you're not living in Japan, then that's kind of, I think it makes everything difficult. If I wasn't living in Japan, I would have more steps probably with Japanese, just because if you don't use it, right, you lose it, right, and maintaining Japanese would take effort and like conscious effort, and so I think that's kind of a big thing. It's kind of when you're living in Japan, it's like, what's your next step in Japanese? It's like, well, I work every day in Japanese. My home life is in Japanese. Basically, all my thoughts are in Japanese. So, I don't really have very many, But if you're outside of Japan, not using Japanese on a daily basis, then yeah, even after you quote unquote graduate AJATT, you're still probably gonna have to focus a little bit in order to maintain it. What's one last piece of advice you'd give people learning Japanese? Trying to think. I will say that learning a language is way easier than people say. It is. It's difficult in the beginning, but in reality, learning English, learning in any language is. I mean, Japanese is like apparently one of the hardest languages to learn in the world, but it's really no different. It's the beginning is always going to be the most difficult, just because you have no base, you have no foundation. But even after just a few months, if you actually put in the time, put in the effort, learning Japanese is just as easy as riding a bike or anything else. It's just repetition basically. And if you have the will and the desire to do it, then it's really not that difficult. It's just if you give up, obviously, then well, you won't make it. But yeah, it's just the beginning really when it's difficult. Yeah, I think that's it really. And then what are you going to use Japanese for, really, I guess? Like I said, if you want to live in Japan, then your motivation for learning Japanese is going to be really high. So I don't think there's nothing really to worry about. Well, since this is the final, can we hear your output? Maybe a Jiko Shokai in perfect Japanese. Oh, geez. Okay, well, it's not perfect at all because my Japanese is not perfect. Don't claim, but yeah, I don't know. はい、ルークです。今20歳です。で、そうだな、これ、まあ、2024年で、まあ、AJATT っていう、まあ、日本語の勉強する方法なんですけど、で、まあ、だいたい5年ぐらいやってて、で、まあ、これぐらいの日本語のレベルになったかなっていう、まあ、普通に会社も全部日本語だし、まあ、毎日普通に日本語で、まあ、暮らしてるっていうだけなのがあって、まあ、あんまり喋れることに対して、まあ、こう、なんだろう。まあ、そうやな。あんまり、まあ、普通 普通に暮らしていけるっていうか。で、そうやな、これからもう、なんて言えばいいんかな。Yeah, I don't know. I need something to talk about. Well, I don't know. I guess you got to hear my my pronunciation, I guess. It'd probably be better. I will make videos where I go camping or I'll be outside or whatever, and I'll have. If you watch my video I just posted too, LMAO, that was good. No, yeah, don't really have anything to say really, I guess. So. Imperfect Japanese. Now, I'm not perfect at all, though. I definitely make loads of mistakes. It's more about just how you recover from those mistakes. There's this one Chinese person in my company. There's only 2 foreigners in my company, and I'm one of them. And the other person, the Chinese person, she came pretty recently. So, but her Japanese is kind of very but yeah, I mean, you can't really be a perfectionist. A lot of people in the AJATT community, they are kind of perfectionists, and it doesn't really get them very far, you know. And like I said, Japanese people only look at your face, really, so it doesn't matter. Obviously, speaking good Japanese is important, but it's more about being good at communication, I think. And yeah, pronunciation is definitely important, because obviously if you speak really good, but if you sound like, you know, watashi wa Amerikajin, you know, then not very good, right? So impression wise, so true, knowing the obscure kanji for rice field means nothing if you can output. Yeah. Trying to think, is there anything I've missed, Wami? What do you think? I think I've covered pretty much most. I feel like I haven't gone really through about my whole experience, but like my whole journey. I always say, do you have any plans with this channel still making videos on life in Japan? Of course, I'll make videos about life in Japan. The thing is, and that's that is a good thing, because I did want to mention this. I'll make videos about life in Japan, but I'll probably stop making videos about AJATT, because, like I said, I've pretty much, I feel like I've just moved on. Like I'm on to different things. I might even make videos in Japanese at some point, but I kind of want more people to see, and I feel like, unless it's like a how to do video, it feels like I should just make it in English, because then I can get more people, and if it gets popular, I can get people from around the world or whatever to see it. And it will probably be way more interesting for people outside of Japan than people that are in Japan, I feel like. So, but yeah, I'm definitely going to make more videos in Japan. Probably the type of videos I'm going to make are going to be more kind of what I'm into nowadays, I guess, because that makes sense to me, right? So, yeah, like outdoors and fishing and camping and stuff. So I'll make more stuff like that, and more videos that are focused on what I'm actually doing, not necessarily speaking, unless I have something specific that I'm trying to get across or whatever, or like something I want to talk about, maybe a story or whatever. Now that I have a motorbike, I could do Tikyo Sam type of rambling videos. That would be kind of interesting. But with the wind and stuff like that, you'd need like a really high quality microphone. So I think he has some good microphones in his helmet or some shit. That would be pretty cool. And yeah, I think that would be a good idea. It is investment in the microphones, but I might do that. We'll see. I mean, I have a GoPro. I would just need the microphone, because you wouldn't be able to hear with the wind. So, but yeah, loads of videos I'll make about just life here in Japan and stuff like that, living out in the Inaka or whatever, and stuff that I'm into now. But AJATT, this is probably going to be the final official video that I'll put out, just talking about things, my kind of grand experience. I guess to sum it up, basically, you need to find purpose. Well, first off, you need to have a solid reason to do AJATT, in my opinion. Other than that, we covered pretty much everything with AJATT this lets ago. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, you need to have a solid purpose for doing AJATT, and that way, then stuff like getting demotivated or whatever, it's not really a problem, because it's just because that doesn't really happen if you have like the core passion, I guess, right? And also you need to realize that AJATT is not forever. Just like how I feel like I've kind of graduated, there will be a time, if you continue, that you will graduate. And it's not about becoming perfect. It's not about becoming perfect in Japanese. It's about getting really good. You get really fucking good, but and you get fluent. But it's not worth the effort, like we mentioned earlier, to become native level, in my opinion. I don't really think it's really worth it for almost anyone, to be honest. I would say unless, but I don't think for most people it's really worth it. So there's that. And then also in general, kind of, how do you say, expanding past AJATT, just life in Japan, you have to consider whether or not, it's worth it for you, and if you really like it or not, and if it's something you're going to live here forever, or, just a period of your life. Ideally, if you did AJATT and you actually put in the time, you did like the few years, 3 to 5 years, I'd say, then, ideally you maybe want to spend most of your life, or maybe your whole life in Japan, because you spend all that time, getting really good. But that's another thing, no shame whatsoever, and not, because you never know until you come here and you live here and you work here and whatever. So, and then also build a skill. Like I said, Japanese is not good enough, because Japanese isn't really a skill. That's like coming to America and being like, oh, I speak English. What can I do for work? It's not going to get you work. You need skill. So there's that. And then try and make as many friends as you can before you come. And then after you come, try and make friends when you're here. But before you come, it would be nice if you have friends that you made before you came, especially if they live in Japan or whatever, or if they also plan to come, because it'll be nice. Also, this is another thing I didn't really talk about, but there's something about the gaijin bubble, right? People say don't fall into the gaijin bubble, and that is true. I do believe that to an extent, and that if you're in Japan and your goal is to be AJATTing and stuff, then obviously sticking with a bunch of similar foreigners and only speaking English, that's not really going to get you far. But you should realize, and you should not take for granted the fact that all these other foreigners around you are, you're in the same boat. It's going to be very relatable, or easy to relate to, easy to make friends. They're going to be good friends. You'll be able to share similar experiences together. So language school, if you're going to like a language school or any school really, university or whatever, then try and become friends with foreigners, whatever. But don't stick in the same bubble all the time, obviously, if you're trying to, get good at Japanese. So there is that. And then, if you can make good Japanese friends, then that's definitely good. But it is hard, and keep that in mind. It is not easy. So don't get too disappointed whenever you find yourself struggling to make Japanese friends, because it is not easy. And loads of people have talked about it. There's loads of videos out there about that. So, I think that's pretty much it. And we're now at 3 hours. So this is technically the equivalent of Matt's 3-hour video, I guess. I feel like I haven't gotten into nearly as much detail as Matt did. But, of course, if anyone's watching this after I release it as a video, leave a comment if there's any question that I didn't get to, which I'm sure there's a bunch. like I said, I didn't go very much into my exact journey, but this is kind of more of the, every Sotsugo should be 3 hours minimum. It's kind of hard to talk about all the stuff under 3 hours unless you're like really organized. I mean, if I wrote notes and I like listed each thing down, I could, but too much effort. But so like I said, this is meant to be like an audio book you just listen to anyway, so it doesn't really matter if if it's that long, I guess, because you can kind of zone out and listen to it. But definitely AJATT, I will say this to kind of end it all off. AJATT was probably one of the best things that I could have done with my life. That sounds kind of bad. That sounds like I'm going to die tomorrow. But no, I mean, seriously though, like AJATT really did change my life. I think I tweeted that or whatever. I don't use Twitter anymore, but I tweeted that at some point. AJATT was probably one of the best decisions I made, and changed my life in a lot of good ways. Like I said, in a way, I met my wife through AJATT, met best friend, loads of people. I've been to loads of different countries, loads of different states, loads of different places. And now I'm in Japan, and, a lot of shit has happened, all because I decided to do this thing. That all started just from, like, a small little passion to, well, it wasn't necessarily that small, but, I mean, it was small. I mean, it was like, I wanted to learn Japanese, but, what I did from that point, what I took, I took that and I made it something, and I did that through AJATT, so definitely glad I found AJATT, and if anyone's out there doing it, you should definitely continue. There's loads of shit to look forward to, you won't regret it. So, definitely one of the best decisions I made. So, I think that's going to be the end. Thank you, Wamu, for sticking with me the entire time. Asked me all these good questions. You gave me loads of good ones, so that should be good. And anyone else who came and said hi in the chat or whatever. But I think that's gonna be the end of this. And for sure, man, anytime. Awesome, dude. Cool. Well, I wish everyone luck. I wish everyone out there luck. Good luck for continue on. See ya, man. See ya, bro. And that's gonna be then. See ya.